Tech is integrated into every aspect of our lives.
I think people shouldn't put their head in the sand. It is going to affect jobs. So think of every application, every service you do, where you'll be using AI, some to enhance it, some of it'll be you doing the same job, you're doing a better job at it. There will be jobs that it eliminates.
Bloomberg brings you the latest stories from the people and companies pushing the tech sector to new frontiers.
I think 100% AI will cause some kind of job displacement, right? It'd be very strange if it didn't. Every other technological wave has also caused some degree of job displacement.
The energy needs are not in the tens of megawatts, they're in the gigawatt range. If you look across what really is being generated, UK and or Europe, that scale's not there.
In the US, you have one standard. You can scale like hell. And here, when you're going into the next country, now you have to stop again because now you adhere to new regulation. We need one framework.
From finance to defense, AI to entertainment, and from the road to the stars.
We'll spend $6 billion on technology this year. I would have liked to spend $8, but I can't afford it because I've got to deliver returns.
How do you see the workforce changing in the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
Well, I, for one, have been trying to be a little bit more honest about this because I feel a lot of my tech bros are being slightly not to the point on this topic. I think there is a massive shift coming to knowledge work.
The existing procurement is too slow and is not really directed enough towards sort of modern defense technologies.
And the politics that shape global tech markets.
When you think about people like Mark Zuckerberg signing checks for $200 million, what does that signal to you?
I do think AI is going to be one of the biggest technologies, if not the biggest, that humanity will ever invent. In some sense, that is rational.
Do you think Musk's approach then is from a position of insecurity about XAI?
Probably his whole life is from a position of insecurity. I feel for the guy. I don't think he's like a happy person. I do feel for him.
I'm Tom Mackenzie in London. Watch Bloomberg Tech Europe. New episode every month, only on Bloomberg Television.
Please welcome to the stage Bloomberg's Tom Mackenzie.
Thank you for putting up with that self-promotion there. Thank you as well for coming back this afternoon. We hope you enjoyed the food. We hope you enjoyed the conversations as well. We have a fantastic agenda for you this afternoon. We're going to be thinking about defense technology at a moment, of course, when Russia is testing NATO airspace. We're going to be talking about cyber, and we've seen some impacts of cyber attacks just recently, of course, and space tech as well. On a day, in fact, when even NASA is saying we need more competition with SpaceX, for example. So all of those things are coming up, but also how creators are using AI tools and how those tools are changing the work we do and the workplace. And that brings us on to our next panel, our next conversation. We're going to do a demo as well. But first, before we do that, we're going to do a poll. And the poll is this: who amongst you thinks that AI will ever fully replace human customer service? And I'm sure many of you had some joyous experience on the phone lines to some of these. So take the poll, the results will come through, and then that's going to set us up really nicely for our demo that we're going to do, and we'll see the results coming through. We've got a few numbers. No, all right, interesting. 55, this is adjusting, okay, yes. And then we'll do the demo, and then we'll see what you think on the back of this demo. So that question sets us up then for our next conversation. We're going to be talking about agentic AI, specifically agentic AI focused on customer service from PolyAI. It's one of the hottest tech startups based here in London. And we're going to be bringing on, after this demo, one of the co-founders, Shawn, who's also the CTO as well, to talk about what goes into that agentic model that they built out and how much success they've had and the challenges as well of building this kind of product. So at 52% now, this is very finely split, guys. This is great. So we'll see again if we come out with a clear answer on the back of the demo. Now, this demo, we have not scripted this, we haven't rehearsed it, it's not recorded, so it could go disastrously wrong, or it could go really well. So bear with me, but we're going to do a little of a demo. I'm going to make a call to a restaurant that I've had a terrible experience at, and then we'll take it from there and see how it goes. But again, this is live, and we have not recorded this or practiced it. So, guys, if we can get the demo agentic AI ready, and I'll place the call then to, I don't know, Bloomberg, Kachina Bloomberg, and see if I can get through. Can we place the call? This is using PolyAI's agent and software.
Good afternoon. You have reached Charlotte, the concierge assistant for Restaurant Cucina, Bloomberger, Rosendale. May I confirm, is this Mr. Tom Mackenzie?
It is, yes.
Wonderful, Mr. Mackenzie. I see you last dined with us on the 11th of October, along with Mr. Johnson and a party of 6. How was that experience for you?
Yeah, not Boris, by the way. It was an awful experience. I mean, the food was okay. To be fair, the food was pretty good. The service was terrible, and you stuck us next to the toilets, and you just got that smell throughout the whole meal. So, yeah, not best impressed, honestly.
I'm truly sorry to hear that, Mr. Mackenzie. That's not the standard we pride ourselves on. May I ask, was the issue with the seating or service addressed on the day?
The manager said they would address it, but we continued to have bad service throughout the day, and we were never moved away from the toilets.
I'm truly sorry the resolution fell short. We'd like to make it right. As a gesture of goodwill, we'd be delighted to offer you a 20% discount on the tasting menu for your next visit. May I assist with arranging a new reservation or answer any other questions for you today?
Okay, 20%. Okay, I'm a sucker for a deal. So I could rebook for 20% if the service is better and if we get a different seating arrangement as well. So, okay, we can do a booking. So that was a yes to the 20%.
I'm so glad we can welcome you back, Mr. Mackenzie. Let's make sure we create the perfect experience for you this time. May I ask if this is for a special occasion?
It is, actually, yeah. It's a colleague's leaving party.
That's wonderful. Let's make it a memorable farewell celebration. Could you share the date and time you have in mind for this special occasion?
How about November 7th, 7:30?
Certainly. And what time were you thinking on the 7th of November?
7:30.
Thank you. And how many guests will be joining the celebration?
Let's make it 4.
Perfect. So that's a party of 4 on the 7th of November at 7:30. May I take your preferred contact number just to confirm the booking details?
I think you have it in the system already.
Absolutely, Mr. Mackenzie. We do have your details on file. Let me summarise. A party of 4 on the 7th of November at 7:30 for a colleague's leaving party, and will ensure a better seating arrangement and apply the 20% goodwill discount on the tasting menu. You'll receive a confirmation email shortly. Is there anything else you'd like to add, such as dietary preferences?
That sounds good for now, thank you.
Perfect. We look forward to welcoming you. You'll receive a confirmation email shortly and will ensure everything is set for a wonderful evening. Thank you again, Mr. Mackenzie.
Actually, there was one last thing in terms of the decor. Can we do something on the decor around the table?
Please go ahead. What else can I assist you with?
if we could get some, I don't know, pink frills around the table, golden balloons, and a bottle of Barolo.
That sounds like a lovely touch.
Doesn't it?
While we don't do decor directly, we can arrange flowers or decor through our trusted partners with advance notice. I'd be happy to pass your request on to our team, and they can coordinate the details with you via email. Would that work for you?
Yeah, that works.
Excellent. We'll ensure the team follows up with you to perfect those details. We're all set, and we'll make sure this is a truly special evening. Thank you once again, Mr. Mackenzie, and we look forward to welcoming you soon.
Okay. Thank you very much. Do you need to pass me on to a colleague or anything else? Are we done? Is the booking done? Apparently so. All right, let's see if the experience is better.
Booking is fully confirmed, Mr. Mackenzie, and you're all set. You'll receive the confirmation shortly. And if you need anything further, we're always here to assist. Thank you once again, and we look forward to your visit.
Okay, well, that was our demo. Thank you very much indeed, Bloomberg Kachina. And let's bring on then the co-founder of PolyAI and the CTO, Shawn Wen now, who can talk us through the technology behind that agentic AI. Shawn. All right, Shawn, thank you very much indeed. So I was pushing there because there was a moment you told us that there were two AI agents, and we were hoping that Agent 1 would pass me on to Agent 2. So maybe I didn't give the right cues or the right prompts to get to that point.
Indeed.
Because there was a fabulous Northern English accent that was going to pick up and confirm my pink frills and gold balloons, which I was quite excited about. Shawn, so talk to us about this. What is going on? What is the model? What is the technology behind this?
Yeah, so this is what we call the agentic systems, right? So technically, it's an AI system that powered by LLM, but it does a lot of autonomous decisions by itself within certain kind of guardrails. So the kind of use case we designed to trigger is that if you ask for private dining room, it will actually hand it off to that northern voice that you like, and then you will go through the private dining experiences.
Okay.
But because it's a small group, it doesn't suggest you the private dining, and then therefore it doesn't actually trigger.
So if I'd said private dining, that would have triggered, and that agent would have passed me on to another agent.
And if you say more than 8 people, they will say, 8 people, it would be a great fit for our private dining, so that you would actually try to book you in that dining room.
Okay.
So it's that little details
Yes. Yeah. They're important in that respect. How much of that agentic AI to agentic AI is becoming commonplace in terms of agents passing on to other agents?
Yeah.
Is that something that we're seeing more often, and how technically challenging is that?
So the kind of system you see, right? So there are a couple of technology behind the scene there. So first of all, it has this personalization capability. So it actually understands is you, Tom, calling in from your phone number. So we can do a lot of personalizations with that based on the contact details you have stored on file. So that's the one thing. The second thing is that this kind of system, it has becoming, is the traditional system is more cascaded systems, much more modularized. Now this system is integrated into one. So much better at making turn-taking decisions and understanding your queries. Lastly, you also hear that there's also emotional touch to it as well. So it can actually understand your emotions and change accordingly to it. And your question about multi-agent system, in fact, we are seeing more and more in our use cases. And this kind of application we are supposed to show is the one-to-one agent-to-agent handoff. But actually, a lot of our use cases are actually about one-to-many agent handoffs. So these are usually cases we see a lot in retail use cases and also in healthcare use cases, where you will have typically a master agent taking the phone call, taking the query from the user, and then the master agent will launch several outbound smaller agents to actually call suppliers in the background to check, whether the product user is inquiring for is actually on the inventory or not, or whether the health care plan the client is requesting for is actually applicable to different clinics, so that the agent can make those recommendations.
So you talked about healthcare there, and you talked about retail. Where are the biggest? Are those areas where the biggest demand is right now? Where are you seeing the most traction for this right now?
So healthcare and retail definitely is quite big. We also see quite a lot in the financial services as well. And in fact, tomorrow I'm going to a panel with HSBC and NVIDIA as well about how to deploy these agents in the financial services.
How difficult is, or how important is it to get the accents right as well? Her accent, it seemed, changed to me a little bit towards the end of the call. I don't know if anyone else picked up on that, but it seemed to adjust a little bit in terms of our accent. Is that technically a challenging thing to do?
Yeah, so getting accent right used to be quite difficult. Like with the technology improved, a lot in the past, 1 to 2 years. Getting the accent right is a lot easier now. Typically now, what we do with our clients is that we will actually present 3 to 5 different voices to them. And sometimes they can say they don't like any of them. They want their own voice actors or whatever. Then we can work with their voice actor to do a voice clone. And usually it just takes a couple of sample of the voice. Of course, the more data you have, the model will stick to that voice a lot more, and it's less variant. So when you hear there's a British accent switches to Australian accent, just because the model has seen both, and it kind of makes sense to stitch them together. So therefore,
stitching together of an English and an Australian accent.
Because it's a common thing it has seen.
We're running out of time.
Yes.
Very briefly, what does this look like in 5 years' time, and does this mean massive job displacement?
Yeah. I think, when we first started, we have been asked a lot of these questions, 7 years ago, is this AI going to actually replace humans' job? It's actually arguably a very tough question to answer. But now, since we have deployed thousands of agents in the world, and then also we have some agents that does the job of 1,000 people as well. What we found and collect feedback from our clients is that this agent deployment don't usually directly replace jobs, because enterprise typically just deploy these agents and then they feel good about it. They gradually slow down hiring or not hiring anyone anymore. And typically we see that there's a sweet point where they are usually businesses are happy to pay certain amount to continue to deliver human touch.
So we can do the poll. We can look at the poll results now. You can continue to add to this as well. We're seeing 75% saying AI will not fully replace human customer service jobs. So that has adjusted quite significantly. But I'll take the knock for this, because I was meant to have said a trigger word that would have seen 2 agents. So maybe that would have changed your views. Let's see. Okay, now we're adjusting back to a split there of 54 to 46. So I think you've done pretty well of demonstrating technology. There's a journey to go. You're already seeing it pretty widely adopted here in Europe and the US as well. So Shawn, thank you very much indeed.
No problem.
Co-founder of PolyAI, CTO as well. Shawn Wen, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Sanjeev Gosain, Group Vice President and Head of EMEA, Verizon Business, and Stuart Rimmer, Interim Chief Executive, Thames Freeport, with Bloomberg's Sapida Shokpur.
Hello, everyone. I'm Sapida Shokpur, Director of Coalitions and Community Innovation at Bloomberg Media. And today we are spotlighting how networks are powering the next generation of digital ecosystems, the invisible engine behind transformation. Now, before we dive in, a quick introduction to our speakers. Verizon Business is a leading global communication provider delivering secure connectivity to clients in over 150 countries. And Thames Freeport, the UK's designated free trade zone on the Thames estuary, is driving economic growth and new jobs through next-generation logistics and sustainable innovation. I'm joined by Sanjeev Gosain, Group Vice President and Head of EMEA at Verizon Business, and Stuart Rimmer, Interim Chief Executive at Thames Freeport. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Thanks.
Sanjeev, we've already heard about how digital innovation and tech-first strategies are reshaping enterprises. Tell us about how Verizon Business plays a part in this ecosystem.
Sure. Thank you very much. I mean, there's been some really interesting things on stage so far today. I think we've all realized that connectivity is fundamental to the way we live, work, and play today. And at Verizon Business, what we're trying to do is work with enterprises like Thames Freeport and others to provide that foundation for digital transformation that they so rely on. And I think whether you're in retail or manufacturing or ports and logistics, as in here, we're really providing that secure foundation for companies to thrive.
Excellent. So connectivity not as plumbing, but as a platform for transformation.
Absolutely.
And Stuart, bring us to site. How is Thames Freeport transforming operations today?
Sure. So we're working across 3 sites with Verizon colleagues at the moment, deploying at London Gateway, DP World, at Forth Ports, and at the Ford Motor Company in Dagenham. And we're driving out use cases really in areas such as like optimization, really sort of enabling some of that automation and speeding up some automation, but actually fundamentally AI adoption. I know lots have been talked about that, but forming those use cases really early is critical to that success.
Amazing. Well, that's logistics becoming intelligent. Sanjeev, take us through the partnership. How's Verizon supporting Thames Freeport's transformation?
Well, we're delighted to be selected by Thames Freeport to provide that secure, low latency connectivity across a site. And the site like that's quite unique. It's over 1,500 acres across the Thames estuary. It requires connectivity in an outdoor and indoor environment. So we're providing that foundation using private 5G, a number of different private 5G radios and sites across that to make sure they have a foundation to work efficiently and effectively, and also so they can advance into other areas like AI and other aspects of it.
Amazing. Sanjeev, you mentioned AI. Where does network connectivity comes into the equation as it comes to AI?
Well, as we're all talking about AI, and we're all probably using it on our phones every day and in our homes and offices, it requires a significant amount of bandwidth. It also requires significant low latency as well to really prove that, especially in real-time applications. And so what we're trying to do is provide that connectivity to provide that, to enable AI, because it often gets overlooked. The network is critical to that foundation for a really useful and an excellent user experience.
Amazing. And finally, with a minute on the clock, Stuart, next question for you. Can you share with us any innovative AI projects Thames Freeport has underway?
We've got loads of exciting innovation projects around AI adoption, not only deployment of kind of infrastructure, which we'll do some announcements shortly around, but actually around the innovation programs in health, in transforming public services, continuing our work around ports and logistics to make sure that really we're making all those use cases come to life over the next sort of 12 months. So lots of exciting stuff for us.
Amazing, and can't wait to dive into those. Well, Sanjeev, Stuart, thank you so much for your time. And to see that story in motion, let's roll out film from Verizon Business and Thames Freeport. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In this series, I want to find out which technologies will actually deliver the most competitive advantage. Let's go inside the Office of Innovation.
What sort of impact is 5G going to have on what you're able to do here?
It propels us into the next generation of efficiency and safety and security.
It means that you can actually be more competitive because now you're able to increase the volume of trade that comes in and out of a port such as this.
Please welcome to the stage Matthew Prince, CEO, Cloudflare, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Peter Elstrom.
Matthew, thank you very much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's really a pleasure. Matthew Prince co-founded Cloudflare in 2009. with the goal of making the internet faster and safer, offering the kind of content delivery and security that only the biggest companies used to be able to afford. Many security companies are not comfortable going public, but you went public in 2019. The stock is up 1,310% since then. You've done okay so far. The valuation is about $73 billion. And now you're recognized as one of the critical digital infrastructure companies. You handle roughly 20% of the websites that are out there on the internet. But you're now quite concerned about the evolution of the internet, and especially the business model that's been kind of underlying the internet so far. Tell us about your concerns.
Sure, and I guess my technology failed, so I'm going with that.
Right.
I don't get to be with Donna today. So, you know, this really started about 3 years ago when we started getting calls from media companies that said, there's a new threat. And usually when customers call us and say there's a new threat, it's because there's a new nation state actor, there's a new botnet, there's a new vulnerability that's online. So I said, what's the threat? And media company after media company after media company kept saying, it's AI. And I have to confess that I rolled my eyes and was like, media companies, they're such Luddites. They're always worried about kind of the next technology. But they asked us, they said, just pull the data, just look at what has changed in our business. And so we did. We have very reliable data going back 10 plus years that shows what is happening. We looked at Google as a litmus test. And the business model of Google is they provide a search engine, obviously. When you do a search on Google, it provides you back 10 links. The search is not over at that point. Your job is then to follow that treasure map, go out across the rest of the internet, find whatever it was that you were looking for. And the way that Google works is they make a copy of all of the internet, all the content, and then in exchange for the right to make that copy, they then send traffic back, which then media companies can monetize through subscriptions or advertising or other ways. And 10 years ago, for every 2 pages that Google scraped, they sent you 1 visitor. Over that period of time, Google has transformed, and we've all watched it, where they've gone from being a search engine, where they give you 10 blue links, to being something closer to what I would call an answer engine, where we've all seen at the top of a Google result now, there's an AI overview that kind of gives you a result. If you search for when was Cloudflare founded, it will tell you right there on the page. You don't have to click on anything else. It's zero-click search. That's the transition from search engines to answer engines. And at that same time, what Google has transitioned to is, instead of it being 2 pages scraped to 1 visitor, now it's 19 to 1. So it's gotten almost 10 times harder to be a publisher, a media company today, and that's the good news. If you look at ChatGPT, it's 1,500 to 1. They take 1,500 pages for every 1 visitor they send you. If you look at Anthropic, it's 40,000 to 1. And the problem is that if we don't have incentives for media companies to generate content, or content creators to generate content, they're going to stop generating content. But it doesn't stop with that. As we shift to answer engines, it's going to impact almost all of our businesses. In a world of agentic commerce, what's a brand? Like, what does that mean? Right now, that's a shortcut for humans to be able to judge quality. What does it mean for an agent that's out there? What happens to every small business in the world when I want to buy eggs? I say to my agent, hey, go buy me eggs. They're not going to walk down to the bodega down the street. Right. So I think that this has profound impacts on what the entire internet is going to be, and what people weren't recognizing is that this is a shift in the platform of how people consume information. The same way that we went from the web on your laptop to social to mobile, moving to AI is changing the way that we're going to consume information. It's going to fundamentally change the business model of the internet. And as we think about our mission of how do we help build a better internet, it just seemed natural that we should be thinking about how can we help figure out what that future business model looks like.
I want to ask about a couple of things that you've done to try to address that. But before we get into that, I wanted to ask the context question. Why is this your fight? I mean, you are not just CEO of Cloudflare, you are owner of a newspaper in Utah, but I think that's a relatively minor part of it.
I mean, we believe, so I was the editor of my college newspaper. I believe local news is incredibly important. I think that the work that journalists do is critical, and we should support them. I also think there's a lot that's broken with the media landscape today, where Google has trained us to believe that traffic is a proxy for quality, which it's not. We look at a whole bunch of things that are awful. When there's an accident on the freeway, Like we stare at it. That's not because we're good people, right? And traffic doesn't always mean that it's the thing that is advancing human knowledge. In fact, like you look at like a BuzzFeed or a Huffington Post, like their business was writing the most salacious headlines with the cheapest possible content. That's not good for humanity. And so there's stuff that's broken about our media world and business model today. It's not that we need to preserve the past, but we do need to think about the future. Why we're in an interesting position is because we're kind of in between it. We don't have a dog directly in the fight. We're not an AI company. We're not a media publisher, but we're this network that sits between them. 80% of the AI companies are our customers. We have great relationships with them. Huge percentage of the internet are our customers. And we're like, these two things need each other. They depend on each other. The fuel that runs these AI engines is original content which is being generated. And yet at the same time, there's a market failure where, for various reasons, which we can talk about, the AI companies aren't actually compensating those creators for the content that they're creating. And so over time, those content creators are dying. So if we can play a role in helping facilitate that, I think that's a really natural role for us.
Content creators are struggling with many of these trends. They kind of struggled with Google at the beginning. They are now struggling with AI engines in particular. So you've tried a couple of things to kind of help balance the power between some of them. There was Content Independence Day in July. You talked about that. Maybe you could talk a bit about that. But also right now you're trying to differentiate between what Google is trying to do in AI and what Google is trying to do in search. Why is that important?
So markets need two things to work. You need demand, and then conventionally we say you need supply. That's actually not what you need. What you actually need is limited supply. If you have infinite supply, then there's no market. There's no market for air because there's plenty of it, unless you're scuba diving, and then there's a market for air. The problem with content today is that there's infinite supply. Everyone is giving it away for free. So there needs to be some scarcity in order for a market to exist. And so what we did in cooperation with literally every publisher from the Associated Press to Ziff Davis, it was say, we're going to change the rules starting on July 1st, where if you as an AI company want to get our content, then you need to actually compensate us for that. And that just seems fair, right? And you know, the people who object to that say, you know, I object because you're holding back progress, you're going to slow down AI. And I say, well, if Jensen at NVIDIA charges you for the chips, is he holding back progress? If your AI researchers who you're paying literally in some cases billions of dollars to are charging, should we bring back slavery and conscription? Like progress is so important that no one should get paid in this? Of course that doesn't make sense. The three things that you need to be an AI company are chips, talent, and content. Chips are going to become commodities over time because there's never been a silicon shortage that hasn't turned into a glut. The researchers, the problem with the AI researchers, the reason that there's a shortage is because 5 years ago, if you were in a university studying AI, you were a weirdo, right? It was a hot field in the 70s and 80s that then kind of went in the corner and everyone thought it was dying. That is not the truth anymore. Today, every university student is thinking, how can I get into that hot AI course? Because they see that it's a successful thing. So we're not going to have a massive, you know, like glut of AI researchers, but we're certainly not going to have the shortage that we have today. And so that actually leaves a lot to be able to compensate creators. But the first step is you have to create scarcity. Google is a different problem. So Google is, I mean, at some level, the internet owes just an incredible debt to Google. For the last 27 years, Google has been the patron of the internet. They not only invented search, but then they invented all the monetization systems with ads and even subscriptions to be able to take traffic and turn it into revenue. And it aligned with their business model. They wanted more web because that was more things that you had to navigate and be able to search. And so they really funded a huge amount of the internet. And as a result, their crawler, the thing that copies the internet down and then creates search, has very privileged access to all of the internet today, something that no one else does.
Because they're spreading money to all these websites, they get access
they
to
get all this access. And so what Google is doing, which again I think makes total sense from their perspective, but is incredibly damaging to the market, is Google is saying, we have an absolute God-given right to all of the content in the world, even if we don't pay for it. Because look what we did for the last 27 years. And they're saying we can take it and use the same crawler we use for search in order to power our AI systems. And if you want to opt out of one, you have to opt out of both. Now, if you're a media company, that's incredibly pernicious. Because if you lose search, you're losing about 20% of your revenue, but it gets even worse. If you block Google's crawler, it blocks their ad safety team, which means that your advertisements across all of your platforms stop working, which is just a non-starter. And so left this way, if this is the way that the world exists, that Google is able to get content and bundle their crawler together, where OpenAI and Anthropic and Perplexity and everyone else will be restricted unless they pay. The problem is that we then will have effectively handed the game to Google. They get something for free that everyone else has to pay for, and that's not how you have a healthy market.
Now, you're here in London, not just because you're at the Bloomberg Tech Summit, but
This,
also
of course,
because
was my top priority.
Of course. But you also wanted to talk with the UK Competition Authority for this very issue. You think that London has a chance to be able to take a leadership role in addressing the very issue that you're talking about?
So every regulator in the world is looking at Google right now. And that actually, there's a big bunch of Google that thinks that the right thing is for them to start paying for content. But they have a bit of a chicken and egg problem, because they don't want to do anything voluntary, because they've got so many different regulators that are looking at them. And so the US and Europe are looking at, but the UK has actually been, I think, more thoughtful and a little bit in front of recognizing what the real challenge is. So the CMA here, the Competition Authority, just designated Google as a strategic player in this space. That gives them the ability to then put regulations in place. And what they're trying to think through is, how do we make sure that the market for AI is fair, that there's a level playing field? And I think that's actually a really smart regulation. What we want here is a lot of competition. What we should all be playing for is hundreds of thousands of AI companies buying content from hundreds of thousands of media companies, hundreds of thousands or millions of small businesses, and that you have a really vibrant ecosystem. It is not in anyone's interest for some small set of companies to control what is going to be the interface for information going forward. And so what the CMA is doing right now, I think, is incredibly thoughtful. And what we have suggested is that there's a really simple fix, which is that Google should have to compete for crawl the same way that any other AI company does. And they can continue to use their existing old school Googlebot to do search crawling. But if they want to have any AIs, including the AI overview that appears now is bundled in at the top of search, that they need to use a separate crawler to do that. And that crawler has to start from scratch, the same way that OpenAI did, the same way that Anthropic did, the same way that any new entrant does. And that's the only way that you can have a fair market. And I'm really proud that the UK is taking this role.
And what's your take on how they were doing at this point? As you mentioned, they designated them as effectively a monopoly in this space. Do you have a sense of where they're going to come down in this area?
I don't. But again, we have said that we are happy to be of service in any way. We've provided them the data that shows that Google has, with their existing crawler, a unique advantage in the market, which would be very difficult for any other player to be able to replicate. And I think over the next couple of weeks, there are going to be some very important conversations. And what's interesting is that if the UK takes a role in this, I think there's an opportunity that the UK becomes sort of and this might not be a very good metaphor here, but sort of the Delaware of content, where in the United States, Delaware created the laws that where everyone registered their company because the laws were so clear. If the UK stands up and says, we want the fairest marketplace for content providers and for new startup AI companies, I think that's the best way to encourage. Don't give the game to the people who won yesterday. Let people compete on the merits. And the best way to do that is to say you can't leverage the technical advantages that you had yesterday in order to bootstrap a monopoly in the future.
We talked a bit in preparation about the dynamics between Google and OpenAI in particular. So Google is an important model because companies like OpenAI are also bound by some of the practices of how they gather information, how they end up feeding into this business model.
Yeah, I mean, but I think it's simpler than that. It's just a fairness argument. It can't be, you can't win in a business when you have to pay for something and your competitor doesn't, where you don't get access but your competitor does because of some legacy relationships. If we want to have a thriving AI marketplace, we have to have a fair set of rules, and the way to make the rules fair is to say that Google has to play by the same as everyone else.
Okay. I see we are now getting red numbers on the screen in front of us. So lots more to talk about, but thank you for taking the time. We'll have to wrap there.
Thank you
Matthew
so much.
Prince, thank you very much. Okay.
Please welcome to the stage Yevgeny Dibrov, co-founder and CEO Armis, and Jill Popelka, CEO Darktrace, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Jordan Robertson.
Great to see everybody. Thank you all for coming. And Jill and Yevgeny, thank you so much for joining us. Been looking forward to this conversation. Just to give you a sense of where we're going to go in this conversation, we've got Jill, who's the CEO of Darktrace, a company that many of you might be familiar with, and Yevgeny, who's the CEO and co-founder of Armis, a company we've been tracking, we've been writing about. We're going to cover a couple different topics today. There's going to be private equity. Private equity is playing an increasingly large role in the cybersecurity industry. There's points of conversation we can have about that. And then also, we're going to talk about the role of generative AI in cyber attacks, ways that hackers are using the technology, and ways that defenders, such as the two companies represented here, are also using them. So I wanted to start with private equity. At Bloomberg, we've been doing a lot of reporting over the past year or so on the increasing role of private equity in cybersecurity. One stat we've reported is that in the last 5 years, private equity companies have bought more than $200 billion worth of cyber companies, either through an investment or outright acquisition. That's a doubling of those figures over the previous 5 years. So private equity is a force to be reckoned with in this industry. And a little over a year ago, Darktrace was acquired for $5.3 billion by Thoma Bravo. And that comes after a period that was a challenging period for the company. The company was public for 3 years, got attacked by short sellers, got targeted by short sellers multiple times. Thoma Bravo, which eventually acquired the company, had been reported to have taken a look at the company early on, walked away, and then bought the company. One thing I wanted to talk with you about, Jill, was let's just kind of start from a little bit from the beginning. You joined the company last year as COO. You became CEO. From your understanding, but you had been on the board prior to that. So from your understanding, what were some of the challenges that Darktrace faced in being not only a publicly traded company, but a publicly traded company in London?
Yeah, great question, Jordan. Hi, everyone. Nice to be with you today. So first of all, Darktrace is a brilliant company, an incredible product. It grew really quickly just on that foundation of a really strong product that served customers really well. We're AI native, and so we were AI before it was cool, if you will, to protect customers, their networks. Specifically in the beginning, we were network, detect and respond, then email, and then cloud. And so when Thoma Bravo made the purchase, it was really on the foundation of that product strength. What challenges did we face before? That's really in the other parts of the business, which is we'd grown so quickly that we didn't have foundational systems to support future scale. And the nice thing about Thoma Bravo is that they have the resources that help us create those foundational systems and scale, not just financial reporting, but also people that have experience with growing small companies into larger companies and creating that ability for companies to grow into the $1 billion, $2 billion, $3 billion range. The other thing that it gives us is access to capital. And so it allowed us really to look at creative acquisitions. And as you know, we acquired a UK company recently called Cato. It's a cloud forensics company. And that's absolutely where the majority of total addressable market is today, is in this cloud space.
Were there particular challenges being publicly traded here in London? We've talked before about access to capital and the ability to recruit
people. Like the ability to recruit and offer stock options is just different here in the UK than it is in the US. Can you talk about some of those challenges the company face?
It is different. There are limitations on how much equity you can provide an employee in a UK company when you're regulated here in the UK. Those limitations don't exist in the US, and so we have a lot more ability to share equity with our employees, which is nice.
Right. And another question on this topic is, so one of the aspects of private equity's ownership of cyber companies that we've done a lot of reporting on is the fact that the leverage buyout is still the preferred vehicle for private equity. Darktrace is no different. The purchase price was $5.3 billion. The debt reporting agencies noted after the deal that $2.1 billion of that deal was debt. That debt is rated highly speculative, right? I mean, that's what the rating agencies say. What do you think about that kind of brand, right? I mean, this is the PE. This is the way PE companies are evaluated by the markets. Do you agree with that kind of label, or?
Well, I think the rating agencies are rating the private equity companies in general across all of their investments, and so. Debt is an interesting conversation topic because for a CEO, I'm trying to run the business, right? And I know that Darktrace has a debt structure. I know that Thoma Bravo is very careful with how they do that. We actually have a very high amount of equity. The composition of debt to equity is actually debt very low in the Darktrace case, which I think is actually very positive. And day to day, I don't think about it. I don't think about it at all. I'm creating a profitable business with a team of incredibly brilliant people here in Cambridge, in the UK, right, in London as well, and we have a growing team around the world. We're all focused on growth and on creating a profitable business, driving EBITDA, and then we use that to pay the interest on the debt. So it's really not something that impacts the business on a day-to-day basis.
Have you had to make any changes to the business structure because of the debt? Have you had to cut back in any areas?
No. I mean, Darktrace was already an extremely efficiently run business. Because we are an AI native company, our cost for R&D, and again, all of that space in Cambridge, is exceptionally low comparatively.
Perfect. One more question here, and we'll get to Yevgeny. Have you talked with Thoma Bravo about a timeline for an exit? At this point, we're in year 2 of the acquisition. PE firms typically like to hold companies for 3 to 5 years. What is your expectation in terms of timeline? There are a number of dynamics that go into any exit, right? And TB will keep an eye on that and watch it for us. Again, my focus is truly like growing the company, ensuring that we're taking care of our 10,000 customers, growing that $1 billion in revenue to an even bigger number. And as long as I do that well, I have confidence that together we'll make the right decision at the right time. Terrific. And if you listed again, if you went public again, would you consider listing in London again, or would it be somewhere else? I think there's all sorts of considerations. I mean, Orlando has been here in Europe quite a bit, and in London specifically, and he's talked about, really appreciating the market that we are in today and, his involvement in it. Sure. Terrific. Yevgeny, I want to get to you as well. I mean, this private equity idea is also relevant to Armis. Bloomberg reported earlier this year that Thoma Bravo, was in discussions with the company to, about a potential acquisition, valuing the company potentially at, as much as $5 billion. Are you able to confirm that those talks are ongoing? Are you able to confirm the talks and whether they're ongoing?
First, great to be here. Great to see everybody. Armis is growing really, really fast. We're growing consistently over 50%, across the 300 million ARR mark right now. A lot thanks to the great demand that we are witnessing right now because of attacks on critical infrastructure. Basically, like all the geopolitical tensions, Russia, Iran, and North Korea, everybody, you see a lot of targeting infrastructure, targeting national infrastructure, the most critical areas, from airports to grids to manufacturing in the US, in EMEA, we see a lot, UK as well, and that's why there is a lot of interest in the company. What I can share is that there are a lot of offers on the table at Armis. I think that recently when Bloomberg reported, there were like 10 different offers. Rounds of funding from 100 million to billions. And what we are focusing is to continue and grow fast. We set a goal of $1 billion in ARR in 3 years, that we are growing fast into that. But I can say that we are going to continue to be an independent company. I want to be in the Hall of Fame of cyber, grow to $1 billion in ARR, $2 billion and more. We have an opportunity. We are the leader in cyber exposure management and security space. Super unique opportunity, and couldn't be more excited about the future.
And are you still, you'd spoken before about plans for an IPO next year. Is that still your plan?
So we believe that end of 26 or early 27 can be a good time. It all depends on the market, of course, but our most important metric for me as a CEO is, again, the growth and the leadership across all our products, and to grow to $1 billion and more, of course, in ARR in the same ratios of winning, and also the percentage of growth. Super unique. No other public cyber company right now does it, and we have a unique opportunity to go out and be that leader from that perspective as well. But we will always align with the market conditions. We'll do what's best for the investors, and we're not in a rush. It will be one great milestone on the way to the billion and the $2 billion in ARR and to building a generational business.
Something we've talked about before as well is the idea that most cybersecurity companies don't go public. Most cybersecurity companies are acquired. And the reason for that tends to be that cybersecurity products are very narrow. They perform one specific function very, very well. You talk about plans for an IPO potentially next year. Why do you think Armis will be different?
So from the very beginning, we were solving a really, really big problem. Basically, the explosion of connected devices, assets in a variety of different environments, the gaps around operational technology security, medical device security. Everybody knows, basically, those are things that we all see: manufacturing plants, retail stores, distribution centers. They're the core of the business of companies that, imagine in CPG, airlines, and basically the business depends on it. Being able to protect those is top priority for all organizations. We've seen that gap. We've expanded more also into the asset management space, what Gartner would call chasm. We expanded also into remediation and prioritization of issues, finding vulnerabilities in cloud, code, not just in the OT and IT world. We continue to do more and more, all per the feedback of our customer advisory board. I can share that myself personally, I'm spending time with at least 10 customers a day. Basically 5 prospects, 5 existing customers, and listening to them about what's next, what is the most important for them, for us to build. And this is how we are growing. So it always aligns with what customers really need, where real budgets are, and customer expects us to build that platform. And what we see in cyber, and you mentioned all the acquisitions, our customers, they want to rely on 10 to 15 main vendors, not on 70 or 80, or sometimes I heard one that 140 vendors, cyber vendors for one company. They want those 10 to 15 that can perform a lot of different things for them, protect the different areas, protect different types of environments, expand more. They want to trust those specific real platforms. And this is where we have grown to be. We have customers that are using 4 products from Armis and growing more. And new products that we are releasing in the next few quarters will be also the core of our cyber exposure management and security.
It really does appear that if you want to be a publicly traded cyber company, and you would know this, you have to be a lot of things to a lot of people. You can't just be one thing to a lot of people. You have got to be a lot of things to a lot of people. Just to give you a sense of what some of these technologies actually do, the core of Darktrace technology is machine learning. Machine learning applied to your network to figure out what is normal, and then ideally, what is abnormal. In the case of Armis, we're talking about a lot of things: vulnerability management, understanding what's on your network, understanding what should be there, what shouldn't be there, things like that. And these capabilities become increasingly important with the advent of generative AI. And in our earlier conversations, I've spent a lot of time as a cybersecurity reporter for Bloomberg trying to figure out how are hackers actually using generative AI. Not machine learning, not AI as we would typically think of it a few years ago, but generative AI. And Jill, you've got a great story about both the use of the technology, the use of generative AI by adversaries, and also the human role, human vulnerabilities that so often lead to attacks. We wrote a lot in the past few months about cyber attacks on M&S and Co-op and Jaguar Land Rover. These were devastating cyber attacks that were caused by human fallibility, call center operators letting somebody into a network when they shouldn't. Do you want to tell your story about the job applicant that Darktrace had that kind of embodies a lot of these threats and use of generative AI by hackers?
Sure, I'd love to. And we talk about deep fakes, and then we also talk about novel social engineering. And that's like a lot of big fancy words for new human manipulation, like finding new ways to manipulate humans around the world with AI, right? So in this case, Darktrace had an applicant for a role, an engineering role, and we were interviewing some remote candidates. We got a CV, a resume in. Resume looked pretty good. We said, okay, we're interested in this candidate. Can we also get some examples of your work? GitHub does a nice job of providing a profile and a portfolio of those engineering experiences, like some code that you've written. And so we got the GitHub profile. We're able to look through that, and that all looked right. And so this candidate made it into a Zoom interview. And the Zoom interview was done from one of our other lead engineers, really sharp people working at Darktrace, right? And he looked at the window in the back and he thought, you know, this candidate should be awake right now, and yet it's dark out their window.
The candidate was supposed to be in Ireland, right?
The candidate was supposed to be in Ireland. Quickly after he said, wait, is it dark outside? The interview ended.
Okay.
And so then we started to look, and that candidate somehow disappeared.
And what your investigation later uncovered was that all of the background on this person, the LinkedIn, multiple GitHub repositories,
were AI generated.
Were AI generated, and part of the way you're able to, how were you able to tell that? Was it the amount of time that it took to create these sites, like the succession in which they appeared? Is that how you were able to tell that generative AI was used for it?
Exactly. It was too short. It was too short from when we saw each of these things. The LinkedIn profile was relatively new. The GitHub profile had actually shown up to be relatively new.
So the bottom line of this is, you know, you have really effective, convincing, persuasive background stories of people, right?
Very
Their
persuasive.
profiles, LinkedIn pages, GitHub repositories, showing how you write code, which was the type of job that they were applying for.
Well, and Jordan, this is why it's so important that everybody here hears the stories, because we all have to be aware, right? We can all be exploited in different ways if you're not kind of aware of what's going on.
Yeah, we had a guest on a panel earlier from Palo Alto Networks who described an attack that they investigated recently where it was a North Korean IT worker who was, this is an increasingly common scam where you'll have IT workers gain access to a company through the recruitment process and through jobs. And the case that they investigated, this worker got a job, was employed, was doing the job, but was using a Gen AI deepfake visual every day on their video Zoom calls to trick their coworkers into believing that they are someone that they are not. And that is to gain access and get deeper in the network and escalate, you know, your privileges. Now, Yevgeny, how are you guys seeing? I love the story of the recruitment because that is such a human vulnerability that is very easy to exploit. What are you guys, one of the other things that we've learned is that generative AI, hackers are using it to shrink the amount of time between when a vulnerability is disclosed in critical software and when that software is exploited. Used to be, that gap would be 24 hours, 48 hours. Now, we understand it's as little as 4. So you've got a vulnerability that comes out at midnight. By 4 a.m., you've got active exploitation on your networks. Is this a trend that you're seeing as well?
So definitely, it's a great point, and we've been, in our labs team, have been working a lot specifically on how can we provide an early warning to our customers in terms of vulnerabilities that are actually exploited. Because you have so many vulnerabilities, and like vulnerability management teams are small. So the ability to really prioritize and focus on what's really exploited is something that we really help our customers and focus with our labs team. Focus on how can we do it as fast as possible, and definitely when we are seeing with AI that time really shrinks and we need to move faster, this is something that we are working very hard. Amazing team of cybersecurity researchers and analysts that are doing a great job and being able to deliver faster for our customers.
So do your analysts and defenders, do you have to use generative AI to also shorten the time that you take to respond? Because it's not just the hackers that are using it, right?
Yeah, so on one hand, the hackers are using it, and we talked also in the past about the scale, right? Hackers are leveraging, like the simplest tools, they can leverage AI to get to a much bigger scale in general with the same tools even. On the other hand, as a defender, we know our environment. We know our environment better than anyone else. So if we do the right things, we can map it, we can understand, put the right traps, put the right compensating controls in the environment to make sure that to prevent a lot of these attacks even before they happen. Some of these exploits as well, if, you know, let's say a camera that is being exploited, and it doesn't have any access to the internet or any access to specific IP addresses in specific countries, already reduced the risk significantly from the very beginning. So a lot of these things we would do in the beginning, in the first several days that we work with the customer. So compensating controls in the era of AI are super important because we know the environment better than the attacker. And that's something that is very significant. We definitely invest a lot in their R&D product. I think that we have a lot of conversations about AI replacing humans. I think that there is no replacement for human talent, but what can happen is we can be much more efficient. Same, 200, 300 R&D and product developers can be way more efficient, and AI will really drive it. And we are seeing it already in terms of productivity.
And another thing I want to touch on quickly, we only have a couple more minutes left, is ways that, this is a question that I ask a lot of people that I interview, how are your organizations using generative AI independent of fighting hackers and things like that? And Jill, you had a great example of product demos. I didn't know that product demos can be so long. Can you tell me how you're using generative AI to help you with your product demos?
Sure. So let's think about product demos not just as a sales tool, but also as a way to train our customers, right? So we're often videoing scenarios, how you'll use the tool. That could be an hour-long, hour-and-a-half-long demo to show every detail of the tool and how to use it, right? So whether it's sales or training, it's a lot of work to go in and recreate that demo when there's a product upgrade. So, okay, Darktrace has product upgrades all the time. And honestly, with the way that our innovation schedules are running right now, that's at least quarterly. Well, we don't want to re-record each of our product demos every time. Now we can use voice generators to type in that code and match the voice that is on the demo, so that if you just want to replace a small segment, maybe it's a 15-second segment of that hour-long demo, you can go do that relatively easily rather than setting up a production studio again, setting up the demo and completely re-recording.
Because the idea being, if you've got to re-record a 2-hour product demo, that's a lot of people's time. You have to book a studio, right? I mean, so it's a small use case. But I like that because that solves a problem, right?
It's a very focused use case, and it's a great productivity enhancer for our teams.
And as you mentioned, enterprise software makers now are releasing code every week. This isn't like every month or every quarter like it used to be. It's every week. Yevgeny, we've got 20 seconds left. Is there a use case as well for generative AI within Armis that you want to mention?
Yes. So one, this is a great use case on the product demo side. Definitely a great idea. I would share one of my favorite one is that right now when you go to the Armis console as a customer, you can just ask what are the top 3 things that I can do today that will reduce my risk the most, and get an answer from Armis 1, 2, 3, and go and continue and reduce risk. This is super significant. Customers love it, and it was great work by our teams leveraging AI.
That's terrific. We are unfortunately out of time. Wish I could continue the conversation longer, but Jill, Yevgeny, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it, and thank you everybody for being here.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, guys.
Please welcome to the stage Torsten Ryle, co-CEO Helsing, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Tom McKenzie.
Torsten, co-founder, co-CEO Helsing, arguably the most significant defense tech startup in Europe. Reported valuation of $12 billion US. You started in 2021 before Russia's invasion of Ukraine. So I'm going to start on this merry question. How close are we right now as we look at Russian interference into NATO airspace with jets and drones? How close are we at this point to conflict with Russia?
Thanks, Tom. When we did our first funding round, I remember in 2021, when defense wasn't that popular, to be honest, amongst investors, and no European VC wanted to touch us, We had a slide in our pitch deck that said that we thought there was going to be a galvanizing event, and that was going to be an invasion of Ukraine by Russia, which I guess we got right, but what we got wrong was the timing, because we thought it was going to happen in 2025. And as we all know, in the event, it happened at the beginning of 2022. And ever since then, we believe it's rational to be cautious and pessimistic, because the reality is that it's too hard to predict right now. And how close are we right now to another conflict, maybe at the NATO eastern flank? The date that we're hearing everywhere is that we all have to be ready and operational by 2029 at the latest. So when we think about systems that we're developing, either in prototype form or going into mass production, we always have that day, 2029, in mind.
2029. NATO countries have now committed to 5% of spending, 5% of GDP. How is that? That's going to take some time to trickle through, but it's starting. How is that changing defense innovation, both here in the UK and on the continent?
So first of all, it's good to see those increases, and they're now real increases. It's particularly visible right now in Germany, but also a number of the Scandinavian countries. The reason it matters is not just because of the pure increase in money. I think that matters as well. There is a very specific reason it matters for innovation and for what we call defense technology, and the new technology that's now required in defense, which is based on autonomous systems and on AI and software. And the reason is that existing defense budgets tend to be entirely locked up already in legacy programs. So even if, as a country, you wanted to reallocate that money, you actually find it politically really difficult, because it usually means canceling projects and programs that a lot of jobs relying on. So it doesn't tend to happen. The thing that now is happening, again, with Germany probably being the best example of the additional funding becoming available, is that you can start new programs and new ambitious programs without cutting old ones. And this is why I'm worried about countries that don't significantly increase the defense spend right now, because what it makes it very hard in that particular case is to actually, introduce new technologies, because it's so hard to cut legacy programs.
And so that links to a question around procurement, which can be a years-long process. Is that still a roadblock? How much of that funding is going to come through to defense tech like Helsing and other startups versus the legacy primes?
It is happening now. Again, in reality, we're seeing a lot of tanks still being bought and artillery systems being bought, and I think that's okay up to a point. And that point is where it can't cut too much into defense spend, the new defense spend. So what we're seeing right now, again, in the countries I mentioned earlier, is that there is now a real commitment to spend money on new systems, new autonomous systems, what we call autonomous mass, but B, also do so in a much faster way than previously. So, 18 months ago, I would have complained a lot about the speed of procurement. It is actually getting a lot faster now.
There's a lot of focus on supply chains right now. This conference is focused on sovereignty as well, and we're thinking about rare earths, and just today, or in the last 24 hours, the US and Australia inking a deal around minerals and rare earths. How vulnerable are you at Helsing and others within the defense space to a dependence on rare earths from China? How do we make more resilient supply chains here? How much of a gap is there?
Yeah, I think we all share a certain vulnerability, obviously, across different countries and across industry. Defense isn't the only industry that's dependent. It is true that rare earths are a problem, but I think the problems actually start elsewhere. There's a whole number of components that you can source in limited numbers from all kinds of different suppliers and countries. What we've learned, especially now that we're going to mass production for some of our systems, it's one thing to build dozens or hundreds of something. It's another thing to build 10,000s or hundreds of thousands. And that kind of scalable supply chain, particularly when you make it, if you want to make it resilient, is still a challenge.
It feels like there are hundreds of drone companies being started up here in Europe. I mean, obviously, almost on a daily basis. And I think according to some reports, there are over 100 different drone startups. So as we think about the capital that's going into defense tech, is that rational? Are we seeing a bubble in when it comes to drone startups here? How are we thinking about whether or not that fund flow specifically into drone makers is rational?
I think there's definitely a bubble right now, and the reason for it is what I said earlier. In 2021, not a single European VC in particular wanted to touch defense. Now everyone has moved into defense, and including the crypto caravan that's moved from crypto now into defense and is trying to spend its money there. I think in some ways it doesn't matter. It creates noise in the market. obviously, but there is a lot of money, I think, that's not going to see a return. And the reason is that I think people use their muscle memory and their experience in VC, which is all around founder quality, which is, of course, important, but also product market fit, which is important, but is only a small part of being successful in defense. If you want to build a prime in defense, you need to understand procurement, you need to have government relations teams, you need to be able to think about even security clearance, understand export law, etc. And these are all subject matters that are quite different from product market fit. So if you just go for drones, drone manufacturers that look that they have a good program or good product that might be useful, you're probably not going to see a return because there are too many of them right now. And there won't be that many programs of records for large drone purchases either.
So there's going to be consolidation when it comes to the drone startups. Is that what you foresee? And you're going to be active in that space?
So there'll be some consolidation. I think there'll be a lot of drone startups and in fact defense startups that are going to disappear again over time. We have a Cambrian explosion at the moment, which is fine. I think it's to be expected. But probably 80% of those companies aren't going to make it.
80% are not going to make it. Talking of your acquisition strategy, if you can just outline that for us, because you recently made an acquisition in Australia for underwater drones. So you've got the air drones, underwater, and then you've got your systems around fighter jets, which we'll get onto, autonomous fighter jets. What is the acquisition strategy at Helsing? You're looking at full stack. You've gone from software through hardware. What does Helsing look like in 5 years in terms of the bits that are missing now and what you hope to?
Yeah, I mean, Helsing's focus is software and AI. That's how we started the company. That's been initially our pure focus. What we've now done over time is layer in hardware expertise where we required it. A good example is the HX2. It's our strike drone where we needed to be able to design something where we could absorb a lot of the complexity of the hardware into software and then start thinking about designing this for mass manufacturing. That didn't exist in the market, and whenever that's the case, it doesn't exist, then we build hardware ourselves. If we find that hardware exists, even in prototype form, that may be useful for us, we either partner with companies or in some cases we acquire them as well. Blue Ocean is an example of a company that we acquired. We've been developing together with them an underwater glider called SG-1 Fathom, which can stay underwater for several weeks and uses what we call a large acoustic model, so a big neural network to scan the underwater acoustic signals for nefarious objects.
I touched on air warfare there because you've done some test flights recently with your Centaur system in terms of unmanned, or at least there was a pilot, but the controls are taken over by your software system with the Saab Gripen E. How much progress has been made? When do we start seeing that operational?
Yeah, so Centaur is a system. It's a reinforcement learning-based agent, a little bit similar to what you will have seen in AlphaGo and AlphaStar with DeepMind, that we've trained through self-play against each other to essentially become as good as a human fighter pilot in what's called BVR, Beyond Visual Range Air Combat. And that system achieved human performance last year, and it's since surpassed it. And it's one of those areas where we're incredibly proud that the team around Antoine Board, which we call Area 9, has been able to build a system in record time and actually show that in Europe we can build extremely advanced AI systems that can compete worldwide and that actually have implications for how we should think about crewed air combat, which we think over time is going to become more and more dangerous because you'll have drones coming up against you, but also large programs that are currently being set off, like, for example, FCAS, which is still a crewed aircraft program, where probably over time that is not the kind of system that you want to have.
Well, it's interesting you touch on FCAS. So this is this program being developed between France and Germany for a new fighter jet, but they're at loggerheads, essentially, and there's corporate reasons for that, maybe some political reasons for that as well. What's happening there? If Germany and France can't get together and build a fighter jet in this moment, what does that tell us?
Well, I think there's still a political will to work together, obviously, and Europe needs to work together to build these systems, and we actually have a rich heritage of being able to build systems together. The Eurofighter Typhoon is one example, the Tornado is another, and there are many others as well. In the particular case of FCAS, obviously, the companies involved at the moment are not able to see eye to eye. That's also happened previously and needed a political intervention. At the moment, that hasn't happened yet, so at the moment, it looks like the...
What is your vision of what air warfare looks like in 5-10 years' time?
I think it's pretty clear that it's going to be largely uncrewed. And the reason is that the AI just makes faster decisions. It's able to find new strategies in ways that humans can't. And I think in a number of years' time, it will be ethically problematic to send humans into the sky against these... And
you touch on ethics there, because we're talking about unmanned systems piloted by AI agents. How deeply do you think about ethics, about the challenges of human in the loop, about who gets hold of your software systems and your hardware?
Yeah, we think that as a company that's steeped in democratic societies, we have a specific responsibility to think about the ethical side. You mentioned human in the loop. Our view is that the human should always be in the loop for systems. And once you have autonomous mass where you have so many systems that you can't monitor each one of them individually, you should at least have a human on the loop. And then you have to make sure that that human is actually an effective human in the loop or on the loop. So they need to be able to not be overwhelmed by the data, not be bored. And there are all kinds of KPIs that we need to track in terms of whether a human actually does their job that are currently being established. So this is one thing. The other thing that I think we have a special responsibility for is to think about who we make those technologies available to. What about proliferation, making sure that those systems are actually safe? And the way we approach it is that we have workshops that include our entire team. The company is now about 900 people, and many hundreds of them actually take part in these workshops regularly to discuss these topics, to come up with guidelines, and then to make recommendations to the management of the company. Because in particular in Europe, you need to have this broad church of people of all kinds of political backgrounds that can contribute to this kind of ethical muscle, as we call it, and build that ethical muscle so that we as companies can make the right decisions.
Are there countries, China you're not selling to, obviously, Russia you're not selling to, are there European countries that you wouldn't sell to?
Well, no, the way we look at this is that there are clear no's. North Korea is another one out of the list that you mentioned, and then there are clear yes as well. And then there are some countries that are kind of in the middle where there are edge cases, and for those we actually, again, call together workshops. We have an ethics council as well that will make recommendations, and then we decide on a case-by-case basis, because quite often it depends on the circumstances and also the capability you make available.
Okay, I want to loop back to the supply chain question because you're in operation in Ukraine. Has Helsing faced direct attempts by Russia at sabotage across any of your supply chains, any of your units and operations?
Yeah, one of our component suppliers was bombed, several weeks into deployment, and that was obviously horrible and tragedy for them. It also meant that our supply chain was disrupted. We had to find that particular component again on the market, and this is a regular occurrence. It's obviously specifically problematic in Ukraine.
Okay, that's a regular occurrence. And when we think about the Russia risk, we think about the CEO of Rheinmetall as well and his own personal safety. Are you still working with Rheinmetall? What is your relationship with the primes? Do you see them as competitors or partners?
Well, we see them as potential partners and friends. I'm not sure whether the feeling is always mutual. We work very closely with Saab, and we also have partnerships across the whole ecosystem. But the reality is that I think some of the primes right now see us as a threat. I think initially we were seen as a maybe sometimes convenient kind of add-on to what their capabilities. Now I think they see us more as a threat, but I think that over time will change as well, because there is a role for the primes, obviously. And if you look at Rheinmetall is doing an amazing job, creating and providing many of the systems that are required across Europe. BAE is another company. And I think what we're going to see over the next few years is that we're going to coexist and we're going to partner again as well. But at the moment, everyone is trying to figure out, how we all relate to each other.
And before we wrap up, you spend a lot of time here in the UK, and you cooperate with the Department of Defence. The UK obviously has a very close security relationship with the US. When we think about sovereignty, is that potentially a vulnerability for the UK?
I think we still need a close relationship with the US. I think that's pretty clear. What we can do and what we should do across all of Europe, by the way, not just the UK, is to build our own systems and be able to stand on our 2 feet, so that we reduce some of the dependency, obviously, but that also we can meaningfully contribute to the security of Europe. And it's pretty clear that we haven't been able to do so over the past few years. It's changing now very rapidly. And my prediction, by the way, is that in the next few years, Europe is actually going to lead even over the US in terms of the deployment of real AI-enabled autonomous systems. So
Europe is going to lead the US in the deployment.
I think so.
Of AI
I think it's going to look that way in terms of the visibility we have right now in terms of deployment that's planned in terms of the volume of these autonomous systems, particularly for the NATO eastern flank. I think Europe is going to lead.
Okay, we'll leave it at that. Torsten Rill, co-founder and co-CEO of Helsing. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Andrew Feustel, lead astronaut VAST, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Gillian Deutsch.
everyone. I'm Julian Deutsch, and I'm so excited to be hosting this conversation with Drew. For those of you who don't know Drew's background, I'll give you a brief summary. So he began working for NASA in the year 2000. He's been to space 3 times, one of which was the last mission to service the Hubble Space Telescope, and another was a 6-month stint on the International Space Station. He retired in 2023 from NASA, and since then has been working with VAST, which is designing the potentially first commercial space station in the US. So I feel totally qualified to be here on stage with you.
I think you are, Julian. Thanks for the great introduction. And thanks to everybody for coming out. It's
well,
nice
thank
to
you
see everybody.
for being with us. I'm sure you could ask a lot of the same questions being an astronaut. How did you become an astronaut? What does the Earth look like from space? How do you use the bathroom from space? What do you wish people knew about space they don't ask you about?
As you said, a 23-year career, I've been, I think, asked just about every question, so it's hard to say it's something I wish people would ask, because they ask all the questions, and I wish we could talk about some of those things and you had a chance to ask all those questions as well. But I think the thing that amazes me the most about space and human spaceflight is the ability of humans to adapt to living in that environment so quickly. That was my experience.
We were just talking backstage about what your life was like coming back onto Earth. I've seen the video of when you first landed. What was that like, trying to walk on Earth for the first time again?
That's always hard. It's challenging. Everybody manages that a little bit differently. For me, it was easier for short missions. A couple of weeks in space, no problem. It's pretty easy to walk around your spaceship when you get home. But after 6.5 months in space, I found it very difficult to do anything but lie on my back for at least 4 hours before my head stopped spinning. But I've also seen somebody do basically an obstacle course after a year in space. So everybody reacts differently to that recovery and coming back to gravity.
And I wanted to ask specifically about the International Space Station, the 6-month mission you did. Missions 55 and 56. I'm curious because, people who don't know what that actually is, it's a low Earth orbit base station run by the US, Russia, Canada, Europe, Japan. It's been occupied continuously since 2000. It was a feat of human engineering and international cooperation. It was considered the most expensive object ever built, with a $150 billion price tag just to build it and launch it. What has been the benefit of the ISS to taxpayers and to governments?
That's probably not enough time for us to talk about those benefits. I think what's important to realize is that, in fact, as you mentioned, ISS was in space for the last 25 years with humans on board, and I was lucky enough to see the whole evolution of that from the very first module that was launched until the time now where we're talking about retiring the International Space Station and building a spacecraft to replace it to carry on those activities. And in fact, there have been space stations before ISS. So to say what has been the benefit, I mean, the cell phone that people are holding in their hands is one of the benefits of human spaceflight, but also spaceflight in general. So everything that we do, every asset we put in space, not only is a technological advancement, but also for us on the ISS and any human platform, it's a way for us to learn how humans live and work more efficiently and effectively off of the planet. I think the ultimate goal of mine, and I think of many astronauts, is that humans should not be a single planet species. We should be multiplanetary if we can, or at least start to understand what it takes to live in places away from our own surface right now. And we finally have the technology to be able to start to do that. I
certainly will be asking you about that toward the end. I'm curious, so yes, the ISS will be decommissioned by 2030. If I'm being honest, from my vantage point, it feels like a very depressing state of the world that it's going to be decommissioned. What do you think is going to be lost without having the ISS?
I'm not sure anything will be lost, because we've really taken advantage and I think tried to squeeze every aspect out of it that we can to help us do the next thing. And the next thing for us as humans is to go back to the moon and explore to Mars. And that's been a challenge. NASA has been the sort of the cornerstone of human exploration for the last several decades, and will continue to do that. But NASA has never been great at doing more than one thing at once or at the same time. So NASA is working and has been trying to enable a low Earth economy, which is what has motivated companies like mine and others to compete to replace the ISS. We want to become service providers for an anchor tenant like NASA and allow NASA then to do the next the next exploration phase, which is return to the moon with permanent human presence there, and then eventually onto Mars. So I'm not sure anything's lost. I think everything has been gained, and to be honest, ISS, the fact that we're allowing it to continue to orbit till 2030 is a feat in of itself. It's past its design life. It's still working well, but some components of the space station have challenges, and it's time to move on.
I mean, the theme of this conference is European sovereignty. What do you think it means to have countries going it alone rather than cooperating together? And I mean, to your point, the ISS will be replaced with commercial space station. Are there benefits to having these private companies really step in and finance these solutions?
Yeah, we see great benefit to it. If you look at the model that the International Space Station provided, it was primarily 16 nations that participated in that development of that asset, but it is primarily operated by the U.S. and Russia, along with Japan and the European Space Agency as well has a module there. But it really doesn't have a lot of. I mean, aside from those 16 nations, it's not like it covers the world in terms of participation. By having a commercial space station, what we believe we're creating is access to space by not only private individuals and institutions, but also sovereign nations. And I can say that in the work that we're doing building up to the launch of our spacecraft and the eventual follow-on with the next phase of that we see great interest internationally, multiple sovereign nations that weren't part of the International Space Station Consortium are now have access to a low Earth orbit platform, and that's that's the service we want to provide. That allows humans to start to explore off of the planet that didn't formerly have that opportunity.
I think for those of you who are not familiar with what VAST does, think of how SpaceX dramatically reduced the cost and the hurdles to launching rockets. VAST is trying to do that with space stations. There has never been a commercial space station yet. Why are you confident that VAST will be the first one?
Well, again, a lot to unpack there. We are a company that came online just in the last few years. We have our design, engineering, and manufacturing facilities all under one roof in Long Beach, California. So we do have competitors. They've taken a different approach. Some of those are more traditional, similar to the way the ISS was built under government contracts. We have one founder and one person who is supporting the company to allow us to build and launch and send the first crew to our spacecraft that should be launched, that will be launched next year. So we're on track to do that. We think that having everything under one roof, we have control over our supply chain, we have control over our design, our engineering, our manufacturing. That allows us to pivot, to react quickly, and actually tailor our hardware to exactly what our needs are and what we want our capabilities to be. So we plan to be first to space, and it's hard to argue with being first to space and showing that you have capability to put humans in your spacecraft.
Can you walk us through some of the concrete examples of how VAST has been able to reduce the cost and really speed up the production of space stations?
Well, I'll just reflect on some of the things I just said. If you look at a model that we can compare to, if you look at the SpaceX model, right? That's a company that essentially put everything under one roof, did all their own design, manufacturing, engineering, and started building their products and operating them themselves. We're following the same model. We have everything under our own control, and that helps with efficiency. It provides an ability for us to make changes as needed, and we know everything that's going in the spacecraft, so we have configuration control of every aspect of that vehicle, and we can actually, mid-assembly or mid-development, make changes that otherwise might be locked up in a contract or a standard government contract that would not be possible in the past.
And when you joined VAST, there was no actual product, right?
So I joined VAST in December of 2023. So we are less than 2 years from that time. And when I joined the company, we were doing a design trade between using stainless steel and aluminum. And today, I can walk into our facility and see our flight hardware, our flight capsules, our flight module in the facility, fully assembled. The primary structure is complete, and we're now starting our secondary phase, secondary structures and integration. So we've come a long way in less than 2 years, and launch is slated for next year as well, that spacecraft.
I know we talked in the past too about how the design of Haven 1 is going to be quite different from what you're used to. To give the audience a bit of an example, I mean, the International Space Station is just 1 yard shy of being the size of a US football field. There's 6 sleeping quarters, 2 bathrooms, a gym, a 360-degree view bay window. In 24 hours, the space station makes 16 orbits of the Earth, traveling through 16 sunrises and sunsets. Am I missing any other fun facts that I should be including?
Nope, those are all good fun facts.
Good,
yeah.
good. What is VAST going to look like? Because from my vantage point, it looks like a really sleek hotel.
Yeah, it does, and there's a reason for that. You know, we learned a lot from Space Station. What we learned is it's really important to integrate hardware and requirements early on, because otherwise, if you look at ISS, for any of you that have seen pictures of the inside of ISS, it looks like it's growing from the inside more to the inside. So it gets smaller and smaller internally every year because there's so much hardware, experiments, fluid connectors, cables, you know, you name it, it's built into the space station, and it gets smaller all the time, especially with the cargo that we send up, and NASA likes to hoard equipment, right? It's really expensive to launch things to space, so everything that goes to space pretty much stays in space, whether it's working or broken. We like to keep spare parts. Our spacecraft is designed from the conception to basically have everything integrated behind the walls and the panels. So we've tried to make it more human-centric, more focused on creating an experience that is comfortable and familiar to astronauts so that they become more efficient and effective in their work and actually feel a little bit more like they're connected to the planet. Because my own experiences of being in space, and I think it's consistent with other astronauts, is that when you are one of 6 humans representing 7 billion people and you're floating above the planet at 400 kilometers looking down, you can really feel disconnected from humanity. So we're trying to build in some more of that, that familiarity with Earth. Like, what are we, like, in what ways?
Yeah.
So if you, I mean, I don't think we have any images of our spacecraft, but the tones we use, they're very sort of Earth-based tones, very warm tones, smooth surfaces, wood-looking, you know, wood paneling features. So all the things that give us those connections to the planet and the dirt and the air and the things that we experience as humans on Earth. The space station, on the other hand, is very utilitarian. Like, it's just nothing but cables and wires and computers, and that's really not, it doesn't create a homey feel. The only way we make it feel like home is by plastering pictures of our loved ones around our sleeping quarters, and that's about it. That's all you can really do.
Well, and you also helped inform the design of the sleeping quarters. Can you tell the audience a bit about what that was, how to make feel like you're actually sleeping back on Earth?
Yeah, so one of the things that I experienced in space was that it's very difficult to sleep, and other astronauts will express this as well. And typically what we do is we bungee cord ourselves, elastic bands and sleeping bags, and we strap ourselves to the wall. And what you see is astronauts getting multiple straps and making those tighter and tighter to feel like they're being pressed against the bed, because when you're in space, everything floats, like everything. So sleeping is no different than being awake. The difference is you turn the light off, but you don't really feel like you're in bed. So what we came up with was a way to have distributed force on the body that would sort of simulate the feel of gravity. In space, your muscles never really relax and your limbs don't relax. So if you just float in the middle of the module, your legs are slightly bent, your arms are slightly bent. But if you think about when you lay in a bed, your muscles pretty much relax. Even though your arms aren't straight or they're not in any specific position, gravity forces you to relax your muscles. So we created a system with my inputs that is an adjustable bladder, air bladder, that you can inflate that will basically press you against the surface of the bed to emulate that feeling of gravity so that your limbs and your body can actually relax. And I hope that'll make a difference for people sleeping, because it doesn't always work out well in space. You have good months and bad months of sleeping for sure.
I highly recommend everyone go and look at the videos of the sleeping quarters too. Can you tell the audience a bit about some of the milestones that are to come? And the original intention was to launch this year, and it's been delayed a bit till next year. Can you walk us through a bit of also why that's been delayed a bit, and how VAST is dealing with some of those technical problems?
Sure. I mean, I'll just start by saying flying in space is non-trivial, and so it takes time. The fact that we've gotten as far as we have in less than 2 years, I think, is pretty incredible to be launching a spacecraft next year. What we are launching this year, in fact, in just under a couple of weeks, is our demonstration satellite. It's probably a meter on a side, plus the addition of a solar array. And on that satellite, we're testing all of our primary and critical components for our spacecraft, our propulsion system, our guidance and navigation system, our home-built computers. So all of the key communication, power control for the solar array. So all the things that are important to work on our spacecraft that we're launching for humans next year is being launched into space on a satellite this year in just a few weeks. So we'll get a chance to test all of that out, and then those components get transitioned over to our flight hardware for humans, and then we build upon that and mature that. So making great progress. That spacecraft that's launching is actually loaded on the a SpaceX Falcon rocket right now down at the Cape, and we're just waiting for the team to send it up to orbit, and then we're all focusing on outfitting the secondary structures within our module and putting that in space next.
And Vas has talked about how its customers will be governments and private astronauts. What is a private astronaut?
A private astronaut is what I understand to be a private astronaut is any individual who has decided they have enough discretionary income for themselves to go to space, but also to do meaningful work. So I've met and interviewed all of the astronauts that have flown private missions to date with NASA. And each of them has gone to space with the intent to do meaningful science and work. So don't just think of people wanting to go for a joyride to space. People that go to space, even for a short period of time, 10 days, they want to do something that makes sense for them and is meaningful to them. Many of them represent institutions, organizations, hospitals back on Earth where they're doing research and experiments that will benefit those organizations or those people. So a private astronaut can be anybody, but we also, the company is also intending to work very closely with sovereign nations to allow other those groups to stand up their own human spaceflight programs as well.
Now we're running out of time, but I do want to ask. Vas has talked about putting people into space permanently, building human habitats on Mars. You mentioned this kind of multiplanetary existence. Can I be frank? Why do we need that?
Why don't we need that? Because single planet species don't last. The dinosaurs are a perfect example. We've never had this much investment and capability in the world than we have now to create access to space for humans. And I think it's really important that we take advantage of it. This is what we do as humans. We explore. We continue to explore our own planet, and we will continue to explore off the planet. There are many resources in space for us. We know there are resources on the surface of the moon. There are resources in asteroids. It all seems a little like pie in the sky right now, but the reality is we will get there. Launch costs come down, access to space comes down, our ability to return those materials to Earth and also use those resources in space will just increase. Every minute that we spend in space, we learn more about how to do that efficiently and effectively.
My very last question is, will you be on that first space station with Vas?
Never say never. There's a non-zero chance that I'll get a chance to go to space again, but we need to protect that asset and make sure that what we have in space for returning customers is exactly the same thing that the first crew sees. So we'll see.
Great. Thank you so much, Drew.
You're welcome. Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Keily, Blair, CEO, OnlyFans, and Tymor Mills, professional cricketer with the England national cricket team and Sussex County Cricket Club, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Caroline Hyde.
Good afternoon, everyone. Tamal, Keily, a joy to have you here with me. I'm going to start off with a little bit of audience participation. We need a bit of that, but not tech-focused one. You're going to raise your hands. Who here has a subscription on OnlyFans? I do. Who here thinks OnlyFans is adult content? Only that many? There's only that many that aren't putting their hands up because... So the reality is, OnlyFans does much more than adult content, and I have a subscription to this here cricket player. So I want to ask first and foremost, for all of our reality check here, Keily, what breadth does OnlyFans have on it in terms of content?
So when OnlyFans was founded in 2016, it was content agnostic, essentially. So whilst it's a platform for people who are 18 plus, people can choose to share whatever content they want to with their fans. So our creators range from athletes to people who keep bees to musicians to anything and everything that you can imagine, as long as it's permitted within our terms of service, which are a lot stricter than most people actually realize, then a content creator can share and monetize that content on OnlyFans. So it's not just the adult content, but it's content for adults.
And then, Timal, you decided to join when and why?
Yeah, so conversations kind of started about this time last year. It was I was approached, or like an email came across my my inbox, and obviously it caught my eye. And as we know, and OnlyFans were trying to broaden their client base and move into athletes and trying to diversify who's on the platform. And it came across myself, and it was one of those moments I could have played it safe and just said no, thank you.
I don't feel that's in your MO.
Well, it probably was, especially with regards to social media. I probably haven't up until that point. I played it quite safe. I did the vanilla posting after games, all the stuff, the generic stuff you see. But if you're going to advance yourself, and I'm someone that works in TV alongside being a player, and I aspire to do that and do more as I go on. And I saw it as an opportunity to attach myself with a huge company, and B, gives me the reason and the excuse to advance what I'm doing on socials, and that's not just on OnlyFans. That's Instagram, TikTok, whatever it might be. So conversations went back and forth for maybe 5-6 months over the course of last winter, and then we kind of agreed and pressed the button in the spring, and then launched in the summer.
And I want to get to that launch story a little bit in a moment. And we've got some great data that's sort of going to be shown throughout about the rapid rise that we're seeing in terms of how profitable, because ultimately a lot of people, I think, don't always realize that OnlyFans is British in terms of the way it was founded by a family in Essex. I think it was back in, 2016. Mm-hmm. Then it has a Ukrainian-American billionaire who's UK-based who now owns it, Keily. But I think all the press coverage I've seen of late, not just about certain of the content creators, but it was also about how profitable each and every one of the people that works for you You are more successful in that way than any other big tech company, NVIDIA, for example.
Yes, thank you. I mean, it's nice to get recognized for that, I think, for the business and for our employees. We operate on the basis of a very lean business model, and we do it deliberately. Every hire is very important and very carefully considered. But the thing that I'm probably most proud of out of those figures, actually, it's great that the company does well, but what's more important for us is actually that we've paid out $25 billion to creators since 2016. So there's not very many tech companies that can talk about creating wealth for others, rather than just profiteering, essentially. And so for us as a company, that makes us very proud when we talk to our content creators and we understand the difference that it's made to their lives, the way that they can continue to challenge themselves or build their fan base or try something new, be a bit disruptive, be a bit, reinvent themselves in some way. And so for us as a business, providing a platform and enabling creators to have the tools to do that and to connect with their global fan base is really the thing that makes us very proud. And you're right, I always joke we're a British company with a very American personality. So everyone kind of assumes that we're American.
And are most of your users American?
The majority of our revenue comes from America. That's our single biggest user base. But there's a healthy number of British people who didn't put up their hand in the room today, who are, yes, exactly, who are subscribers or content creators on OnlyFans as well.
What's so interesting is when I'm subscribing to you, Timal, I can see some content that you're delivering for me for free, but then there'll be some behind a paywall, $5, for example, because I'm an American user. I get it more in the dollar. I'm sure it'll be pounds, wherever you happen to be based. We can talk about some of the Latin American currencies that you're looking to be taking more of, Keily. But how has that helped you express yourself, thinking about the different type of content for the different type of pay or tip that you're currently working at? Wasn't it an attractive element that you wanted to make money through this, or was it more the experimentation you wanted to do?
Yeah, so I'm lucky in terms of, I think most of the athletes that are on OnlyFans come from sports that don't pay very well, so they're using OnlyFans to, help them continue playing the sport that they play.
Yeah.
You read about Olympic athletes earning, basic or maybe below living wage to be an Olympic level athlete, and they're having to find other ways to, pay the bills and buy food. So I'm very lucky that I play a sport that pays me, well. I'm not doing OnlyFans for the money, really. Obviously, it helps. My wife is in the audience. I'm sure she'd love it if I made loads of money on OnlyFans. But I don't need the money from OnlyFans. So for me, it was more, as I mentioned earlier, an opportunity to, be sponsored by it and attach myself to $1 billion company. That's, not many athletes can say that. And also, it gave me the impetus and the reason to push what I'm doing on socials, as I mentioned earlier, because that's the way that the world is, isn't it? Everyone's on their phones, content, from young people through to old people, everyone's consuming content. So it gave me that kick to do more, and just experimenting with different things that I can do.
It was perhaps a little too experimental for some. Just talk us through the story, because it's a fascinating story of the ECB, and I'm not talking about the European Central Bank here, folks, but your regulatory body for cricket, but doesn't actually oversee you per se, but they were a little concerned about certain stickers on your bat.
Yeah, so the ECB weren't overly happy, so I didn't consult with them because I've played for England. I've been lucky enough to win the World Cup and stuff, but at the moment I'm not an England centrally contracted
Can we just have a round of applause?
Oh, no.
We've got a World Cup winner here.
But at the moment I'm not centrally contracted by England, so they don't pay me. I'm not obliged to them. I'm only really contracted to Sussex. So before this came about, I spoke to Sussex, who are my employer, and cleared it with them to make sure there was nothing that was going to upset them, and they were completely supportive, which was brilliant.
And they've loved your content creation more broadly, right? And
yes,
coming in behind the scenes and showing how it's done.
And it helps the club, vicariously through that as well. But yeah, so just before we obviously launched my OnlyFans, just before the 100, literally 2 days before the 100, which is the ECB's baby. It's their biggest competition. I'm the leading wicket taker in the history of that tournament, so I guess a lot of eyes are on me. And yeah, on my Instagram 2 days before the start of the tournament, there's me with an OnlyFans hoodie, OnlyFans cricket bat, and a sticker on the back of the bat. And on the day of the first game of the tournament, I had maybe 4 or 5 different calls from various different marketing communications higher ups at the ECB, all in a bit of a flap and a bit of a panic. And there was a little bit of an oversight on my behalf, because there's a bit of an unwritten rule within cricket. So you'll often see stickers on the back of players' bats, and it's, as far as I was aware, it's unregulated, because it's never really anything that flags up. But in the actual, the laws of the game as such,
small print.
yeah, there is. Every time you have a sponsor on the back of your bat, it must be approved by the the regulatory body. So I didn't know that because it's never been enforced before, but they obviously waved that in my face quite quickly and asked me to take the sticker off, and I did. And it was I was in a bit of an awkward position because obviously it's in my contract. I had the sticker on the bat. I was playing a game literally in 4 hours' time, so I was obviously needed to focus on that. But so anyway, I took the sticker off. I played the game. I went to bed, and then the next day I woke up to the BBC, the Independent, I believe, the Daily Mail, all running articles about how the ECB had refused to let me do the have the branding on my bat, and that didn't come from me. The only people that I told were myself and my agent. So we were the only people that knew about this. But as often is the case, the PR I received from all these articles was probably much more than me just having a sticker on the back of my bat. So the ECB, maybe in an attempt to save face, probably.
What's the cricket equivalent of an own goal?
Well, dropping a catch, I guess.
There we are.
Yeah.
They dropped a catch. Keily, do you have some empathy, sympathy for when these regulatory bodies that have a certain assumption about the business make that assumption? How do you go about winning hearts and minds and get an ECB to say, look, this is adult content and there's an adult viewer that is viewing cricket, and it's an okay, safe space to have a sticker?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first things first, you've got to have a conversation, right? some bodies are unwilling to talk to us about sponsoring athletes and things along those lines, and will make unilateral decisions about the nature of the content on the platform and also about our content creators. For us, we're ultimately here to support the athletes that we sponsor. So, you know, if Timel's not able to put a sticker on his back, that's okay. Like, we understand that's part of the challenge, I suppose, with OnlyFans and the heavy association with adult content. But as we continue to diversify the content, continue to get more athletes out there, continue to change hearts and minds, probably one conversation or one conference at a time, let's say, we hope that more people will be open-minded. I mean, I think it's very interesting. I often make a comparison to Red Bull.
Yeah.
So if you think about Red Bull in the beginning, obviously they were an energy drink and seemed to be high caffeine and bad for people and things along those lines. And they've actually done a wonderful job of sponsoring athletes, doing the X Games, getting out there, Formula One, things along those lines. So there is good examples of brands that have been able to do that. But I also think it's very important for us to know who we are as well. Like, we are a platform for over 18s. We do have adult content creators on that. We also have sports people. We also have musicians. And so being true to who we are and not trying to shy away from that, instead having the conversations with people, is very important too. There's no point in us trying to pretend we're someone that we're not. We need to be true to ourselves.
You've also got a real focus on comedy as well, and that's something that I've been absorbing a lot. But it's not a laughing matter, pardon the pun, when it comes to the safety side of things. And this is a tech conference. So how is it that you have really lent into, particularly when you came on board, you've come from really being the legal expert for OnlyFans. You've come from being a partner of a law firm, joining, then rising the ranks very quickly to become CEO. How is that cyber mindset, how is that safeguard mindset infiltrated the very underlying technology of the business?
I mean, ultimately, without the safety technology that we have in place, OnlyFans can't exist, right?
Yeah.
So as part of the content creator onboarding process, individuals have to go through a facial recognition piece, whereby we match their age and identity to their face and a live likeness of themselves. We also check their social media accounts. We check that the bank account information is in their legal name as well. We moderate all of the content on our platform.
With humans or with AI?
With humans. So we have human-led technology-assisted moderation. So we use different technology to highlight the number of individuals in a piece of content, because more people, more risk, for example. Level of nudity, if any, in content. Any blood or violence or anything that would indicate the presence of a minor. All of that is then flagged by the technology system and goes to priority review by a human.
How much is getting flagged vis-a-vis the other social media companies, do you think?
An awful lot less is the answer. And the reason why is because A, we're very open about the fact that we moderate all content. B, we're very clear about what is and is not allowed under our terms of service, and we're very clear and transparent with our users about what that is. And C, it is well known that people will get their content taken down if they post content that they're not allowed to post on the platform. There's a lot of misconceptions about the kind of content that is allowed. Content creators have recently been banned for extreme content on our platform, and we take steps to protect our user community very, very seriously in that sense. And we're always getting better. So, for example, we employ hash matching to block CSAM images and to block non-consensual intimate image abuse. We look very carefully at AI content, for example, to make sure that AI content is the creator or the creator's own likeness and not an AI avatar created by somebody else and used to make content. So it's
and that must be quite a feat from a technological perspective.
Yes, it's an ever evolving project, basically. We never kind of stop trying to get better at figuring out what is the newest technology that's out there, testing that, and also making sure that we're delivering for our community in terms of safety.
And let's talk about your community and what you've found, whether it's on other social platforms, but particularly what you're creating on OnlyFans. What's it that people want?
It's varied, and I'm still figuring it out. I've only been on the platform since August, so we're only a couple of months in, but I think the one thing that I found, well, when I was going through the platform on the onboarding process, and I'm learning, because I didn't have an account until I signed up. You can the scope for what you can do on there is really varied, and I'm like most athletes or people of influence. I'll have DMs in my Instagram account, for example, of so many people saying, "Oh, what do I need to do for X? You know, what tips can you give me for that? What can I do in the gym?" Like all the generic things. Those are people.
What do you eat for breakfast?
Yeah,
what's your morning routine?
The little things like that. But I think what people value is the actual one-on-one interaction, because I could put a video out doing what I do in the gym, but if I'm actually responding to somebody, there's obviously that connection. So the way I see it is, now that I've created this extra space, is that if someone's making the effort to maybe move over from my Instagram, sign up, make an account on OnlyFans, and come and ask me a question, they must really want that information. And it is often pretty simple stuff, or basic things that, or maybe basic to me as an athlete, but to them, or maybe as an aspiring athlete, or just as a fan. If they're going out of their way to ask those questions, or to ask for examples of what they want, that's what I think's probably the way forward with the platform from my perspective.
And then let's go to the AI side, Keily, because we all can't stop talking about it. But interestingly, Sam Altman can't stop talking about erotica when it comes to AI as well. And it's sort of interesting that that has ended up being seemingly a use case, not only, and we're going to hear later a little bit more talk about people forming relationships with artificial intelligence, but people have been using it in ways that perhaps, well, we shouldn't be surprised by, but are. How are you seeing AI-generated content wanting to be coming into the platform? How are you regulating what is on the platform? You already said that you're making sure people aren't pretending that they're not someone that they aren't. But how else are you seeing AI slop or great content come on?
Well, it was really interesting. So there was the Ipsos do a lot of tracking, obviously, of market research data, and they recently asked adults, a selection of adults in America, whether they wanted humans or AI to create their content. And over 75% of people said they wanted humans to create their content. We believe that thesis. I do not think that people want AI-generated content. I personally don't want AI-generated content.
You don't want vibes?
I don't want vibes. I want good vibes, obviously, but I don't want vibes. And you know, OnlyFans has actually shown that the whole premise of our platform was creators connecting with fans. That was the whole premise of the platform, and growing their fan base in that way. And in a world where there is so much other content out there, why would you choose to come to a platform other than for that? And so for us, when we think about athletes growing their fan bases and interacting with their fans in that way, AI can't supplement that. It can't change that. It can't give someone that experience. It can give you something else. There's lots of wonderful, great use cases for AI, but
helping you with your honeybees.
Helping me with my bees, exactly. I do use some AI for bee tracking. I will tell you that. But I do not think that it's going to replace the need that we have to see humans create content, basically. And when it comes to AI content on OnlyFans, of course, people can use filters to enhance their appearance in a certain way. Maybe you have blonde hair one day, maybe you have brown hair the other day. But we need to be able to tell that it's them, and they need to be able to tag it so that the fans know that they're engaging with AI-related content, but no holy AI accounts.
Timur, how has it made you think about creating your content? How do you go? I mean, you've got a busy life, family, work, jet setting at a moment's notice to Guyana, I think it was the last one. How are you fitting it in? Are you being able to, I'm sure your wife might every now and then pick up a phone and help video something, but are you getting your team to support you? How are you doing it?
Yeah, so that was one of the things that, again, this enabled me to do, was that, because it's hard. If you're trying to create content and do it, the one thing is all the algorithms, no matter what platform, they reward consistency and frequency. So if you're going to be putting out content, you need to do it regularly to get rewarded for that. So yeah, I, for the first time, employed somebody a company, to help me with that and look after my off-the-field stuff and specifically my social media. So it's been huge. It's opened my eyes, really, and how easy it is when you have somebody helping you and coming up with ideas. You collaborate with them, but then they can do the editing. It makes it so much more easy.
You stay very authentic to you.
I think that's important, yeah. I think it's important because otherwise people can tell that maybe you've got somebody helping you do it, but you still need to come across as yourself on the camera. So, and I think that it's helped that I'm not just a cricketer. I have worked in TV and I do commentary and I do things away from cricket. So I'm comfortable on camera. You know, being able to
I would never know you were comfortable in an audience.
Thank you. But it's, yeah, having a team definitely helps because, as I say, you need to be you need to be on it, you need to stay on it, because you don't want somebody, if somebody's gone out their way to send me a message on OnlyFans and ask for something, and I don't reply for 6 days,
Yeah.
you know, that's
You're losing them rather
exactly.
than gaining them.
You're not gaining a relationship there. So so with regards to creating the content, I've helped doing that, but then actually, as you say, answering it and interacting with whoever's approached me, then that's all me.
Keely, let's go back to your team. Because we were just saying how profitable they are and how each of them is basking in vast quantities of revenue per person that you have. But you're expanding the team from a geographical reach perspective. We've talked about US being dominant in terms of the revenue stream, UK, Australia, I know of. But where else are you pushing into? Where wants OnlyFans to work?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because obviously as a global business, we operate across the world and from our HQ here in the UK. And we're not really expanding in terms of boots on the ground in that way. We look at markets in a more global sense. So whenever we look at new markets to enter, it's always looking at what's the social media adoption like in that country, they've got high social media adoption, high social media usage. B, what's the culture of fandom? So there's like certain places which have a high culture of fandom.
Like Brazil,
right?
I mean, if you're a musician, whoa.
Exactly, and so we look at that, and then C is also the regulatory environment. And then finally, the last one is payments. We need to be able to pay our creators safely and well in that environment. So all of those things go into a decision for us to think about making a push into a particular country or geography. I mean, I think what's really interesting is when you think about, listening to what Tamal was saying, the creator economy is enormous and it's growing, and it is not just the creators, it is the camera people, it's the editors, it's everything that surrounds the creator economy to enable it to function. I think Goldman Sachs estimated that it's currently at a value of about 200 million right now, and in 4 years' time it's going to be about 500 million. If we think about how that's going to transform media, entertainment, sports, fandom, athletes, engagement, and how profitable it can be.
Without advertising. I think that's the important thing. That's your distinction.
Yes,
right?
Exactly. I mean, our entire model is based on a very simple 80-20 split. Every payment that's made on the platform, 80% of it goes to the creator, 20% of it comes to us. And what that means is that when we are thinking about new platform features, new markets, things along those lines, our priority is always, is it good for the creator? Is this thing going to help a creator monetize? Is this thing going to help a creator grow a fan base? Because that's our North Star. We don't have to go, is this going to annoy the advertisers? Because we don't have to worry about them. We just have to worry about keeping our creators and fans happy.
What about, you just said about the regulatory environment. Where is it hardest? How has it been hardest? Where have been the most surprisingly awkward places for you to have to navigate, trying to convince them that there's adult content, but there's fandom in all its guises?
Yeah, I mean, look, the world is a fun and interesting place when it comes to regulatory engagement, and there's definitely...
You're saying the MPs don't want you around for lunch all the time?
Sometimes not, apparently. But I'm a very good lunch guest. She has
a very specific martini order, everyone, if you just...
Very specific martini order. It's true. I'm not...
Maybe not at lunchtime.
Not telling my secrets, not at lunchtime, exactly. But no, I mean, I think when it comes to the regulatory environment, it's obviously keeping up to date is always the thing, making sure that our team are looking at developments across the globe, making sure that we have the technology in place to enable us to comply with requirements. So, for example, around age verification. So there's different laws about age verification in different countries and different jurisdictions. Some are, you have to re-verify every 60 minutes. Some are, there needs to be a double-blind, privacy-friendly version of doing this. Some are concerned that companies will hold the biometric data. Some want you not to hold the biometric data. So it's a difficult environment in which to operate, but it just goes to show why it's so important for companies to take it seriously and to put in place the necessary measures to obviously comply with the law, but also go beyond that and think about actually what's best for the community as well.
Talking of being taken seriously, Tamal, did people take it really seriously when you announced? What were some of the more interesting reactions and what were some of the more surprising and positive reactions?
Yeah, look, I knew it was going to cause conversation. I didn't tell a huge amount of people before it launched, so I was literally, I remember when it went live, I was in the dressing room at training before a match, and yeah, you get all the usual stuff, you know,
bit of banter,
locker room kind of banter, but yeah, you do once you cut past it, people know me as well. They know what I'm doing on the platform and what I'm about. So yeah, once you get past the kind of banter between mates and you explain to people what you're doing, people understand it and make sense. And it was just a case of me being brave, and I said I'm the first cricketer officially on there, and you know, hopefully more join.
Have they? Has anyone had a few quiet conversations with you?
people have spoken about it. Yeah, I'm not sure if they've gone as far as to setting up accounts, but I hope they do.
And Keily, what next as the business grows? Because this is a tech summit talking about European tech success stories, of which many sometimes forget that OnlyFans is one of them. But there is talk that you might be potentially for sale with other American buyers interested. How do you think about the vision of OnlyFans' future in the next 5 years?
Can't give you a scoop on that one today, Karen. You tried. You had to try. You had to try and ask the question. But no, I mean, look, the next 5 years, I think, is going to be an interesting time for all of us in terms of technological development and also global markets. And then, as I said, we're looking at expanding in terms of broadening out the different content creators that we have, looking at comedy, music, sport, all of these things. TV, OnlyFans TV as well. Like we've got our sports show Rise and Grind, which is like follows OnlyFans athletes on that. We're currently producing a volleyball-related show. Nick Kyrgios did a pickleball tournament on OFTV, obviously Australian tennis player.
More eye injuries to come, yeah.
Yes, exactly. So all of these things. But it's an exciting time, I think, for European tech. And I feel actually that the ecosystem is much more optimistic, that there's a lot more investment in European tech. And I think the people in this room will show us what the next 5 years are going to look like.
I love a bit of optimism, particularly in the world of sport and in the world of tech. Thank you both so much for being here. Tim Mills, Keily Blair of OnlyFans and of worldwide cricket fame. We thank you.
Please welcome to the stage Lauren Kunze, CEO, Pandora Robots, and co-founder, Iconic, and Shreyna Rath, CEO and technical co-founder, Jamie, for a conversation with Bloomberg's Palmy Olsen.
Well, thank you, everyone. I think this is going to be a really fascinating conversation, so thank you for staying for this last session. I've been writing about technology for more than 15 years, and one of the most fascinating areas of the tech business is AI companions. This is something that's been around for a number of years, but it's really been accelerated by the generative AI boom. So very excited to speak to Lauren Kunze, who is the CEO of Pandora Bots and the co-founder of Iconic, and Shreyna Rath, who is the CEO and co-founder of Jamie. We'll talk a little bit more about the context of all of this and why this could be so big. But just to start with, AI companions. Tell us about what your AI companions do and your chatbots do. Maybe let's start with you, Lauren.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me. It's great to be here. Pandora Bots has been in the business of chatbots for 2 decades now. One of our early chatbots, Alice, famously inspired the Spike Jonze movie Her. So you could say this has been top of mind for us for a while. The original company has hosted over 300,000 chatbots. We've processed 100 billion interactions between bots on our platform. We built the first AI influencer and fashion model during the pandemic when avatar technology was evolving. And lately, we've been working on an AI advisor, which we're very excited about as an appropriate and positive use case for AI companions.
We will talk more about what you mean by appropriate later. And Shreyna, and by the way, Lauren, you're based in San Francisco.
That's right.
And we have Shreyna all the way from Australia, so we really are covering the whole globe here. Tell us about Jamie.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me. So Jamie is the first AI companion for women. It gets you, it's there to boost your mood and to make you smile. When we first started looking at AI companions, we saw that they were heavily targeted to men as hyperreal and hypersexualized digital girlfriends. So Jamie is built by women for women, and it offers friendship, mentorship, and romance.
Okay. So let's just set the scene as well, because I think sometimes when I talk to people about AI companions, they're kind of like, really? That's a thing? But there are apps out there like Character AI, which has something like 15 million monthly active users, Replica, Chai, Talkie. I mean, this is really a growing industry. How has the generative AI boom kind of accelerated something that was already, as you said, Lauren, has been in the works for a while?
Yeah, well, ever since chatbots were first invented by Joseph Weizenbaum in the 1960s, what we've seen is a phenomenon that people can bond very easily with even stupidly simple machines. So Eliza, the first chatbot, was designed to mimic a Rogerian therapist. It would simply repeat back what you said with a question. And that caused many of Weizenbaum's students, who were grad students at MIT, to be transfixed for hours. And that actually scared him a lot. And that's what we saw in Pandora bots too, right? Even before the pre-generative AI era. The users who were most engaged were there for companionship use cases. And by companionship, I don't mean sex and romance, although that was always approximately 30% of the traffic, and that holds true for ChatGPT and general assistants.
This is a mind-blowing statistic, by the way. 30% of prompts or text going into chatbots, you're saying is romance related?
Romantic or
sexual?
Sexual in nature.
Okay.
Or otherwise abusive for general purpose assistance. For bots that are actually designed to court that use case, like a character AI, I've heard numbers up to 70% of traffic.
And why do you think that is, by the way? And either of you feel free to, I mean, what is it about the human psyche that makes people want to gravitate towards chatbots in that way?
Well, I think there's an evolutionary incentive to evaluate all seemingly sentient systems from the point of view of whether or not we can mate with them.
Okay.
And I think people also like
mate?
to
Can't mate. Okay.
Yes, can. And people like to kind of try to color outside the lines to figure out where the lines are. So we actually have also seen that 10% of people say I love you to chatbots. Most of them just want to know what's going to happen next. They don't want to say it every day, but some of them do.
I have to bring in Sam Altman and ChatGPT because, as I'm sure you both saw last week, less than a week ago, Sam tweeted that ChatGPT was going to have more personality and that a lot of the mental health risks that had been brought up had been mitigated. And so there was going to be loosening a lot of the restrictions around ChatGPT this December and include the ability for erotic role play, erotic content.
Well, let's just call it porn, because that's what it is.
Let's just call it porn.
We don't have to use that term.
Okay. Serena, what's your view on that? How did you react to that?
So I had like two kind of reactions. The ER in me, was a bit scared. Obviously, we know about the gender bias that exists, and we know that LLMs have kind of homophobia and racial stereotypes as well. So with erotic roleplay, then there's that danger that women will be further objectified. And then we're designing these systems that kind of cater to men's needs and females get left behind. But then the Tigger in me, I'm excited by this opportunity. I think women are very smart consumers, and so if something's not catering to us, we will find a solution that will. Like Jamie.
Lauren, how did you react?
Yeah, well, I was pretty shocked because I think it's very surprising that a big brand would risk their brand on a pivot like this. And I think it's all about the money, right? ChatGPT's revenue is $13 billion. Its valuation is $500 billion. I think that's about a 40x gap. So they have to monetize somehow. And the consumer mandate is obviously there. And I think the bet or the vision of the future is that this will shake out a lot like the app economy. There's only going to be about 5 things that you use every day. And I think they're all betting that the next biggest frontier in digital real estate is not your social graph, but your heart. And that's really going to be the AI that you come back and talk to every day, is the one that you have an emotional relationship with.
Yeah.
And that's scary.
But it's just to kind of, it's not just an emotional relationship. It is this kind of sexual attachment that Sam Altman very explicitly described. And I wonder, how hard is it to resist clearly OpenAI couldn't resist. They need the money, and so allowing.
Well, they did
that-
resist for a while.
They
This
did
is a
resist.
reversal of previous
And Sam
policy.
even talked about that in podcasts. Well, we haven't done that yet, but I noticed with other chatbot apps who banned that. Character AI, for example, lost a few million users when they banned erotic roleplay. Replica lost several million users. So this, I mean, Serena, this is quite a difficult thing to not put in to your business. Are you allowing it or no?
So we are allowing romance, and I think romance and sex are very different, especially when it comes to women. What we've found with our users is they're opting for, for friendship and mentorship. And while we do allow for the sexual content, we do know that women have a history of romance. And, we think that AI companions are just the next generation of romance.
And Lauren, I mean, this is, it's sort of like you have to strike a balance, don't you, between maybe allowing that or, allowing people to get dependent, potentially addicted to this service.
Well, we don't strike a balance. We don't allow it.
You don't allow it at all?
We don't allow it at all. And
why is that?
We just don't see it as net positive for humanity, and we also don't see it as part of our brand identity.
Okay. Even if you really need the money?
Yes, we will find, I think there are other ways to make money, and one of them that we're working on is an advisor called Celeste, and I think the way that we try to evaluate use cases internally, and if this is useful, please steal it, is we look for use cases at the intersection of high-frequency usage by consumers and low risk. So sex chat for us falls in the high-frequency usage and higher risk category.
Right.
And then low-frequency usage is obviously not that interesting. And then we also consider things like therapy and financial advice and legal advice, things where LLMs cannot be accurate, to also be high risk because there's a big risk factor if you get it wrong. So that's sort of the quadrant that we zero in on, and we've always programmed our AI at great missed revenue opportunities to rebuff sexual advances.
I mean, it strikes me that if this happens to ChatGPT and more people have an opportunity to engage with it in that way, could be quite a big moment for AI companions, considering ChatGPT is used by 800 million people a week. That's like 10% of the global population, and that's a number that could probably go up.
Yeah, and I think the scary thing that we saw, and again, we've processed over 100 billion interactions, is that the most engaged user segment on our platform, initially very early on, largely male, and returning day after day to reenact the same rape and murder scenarios and a lot of violence against women. And we asked ourselves, could we build an AI that would help socialize the antisocial? And we concluded the answer was probably no, that this was going to drive up social isolation, which a lot of research is now confirming. But there's actually been an interesting trend recently, which is that users of the technology are overwhelmingly women. But the other thing that we saw in our data is that the most engaged users are young people. Kids in particular are very curious about this technology. I don't think age gates in terms of service or checking a box or providing your birthday really stops anyone who wants to try something. And so it's really young teens. And it terrifies me to think when we have all these young women with romantic AI partners who are much more eloquent, no offense to teenage boys, and probably a lot more emotionally satisfying. And I do think there's a huge business opportunity there for somebody to do something positive and to help people build better social relationships. It's just not the direction that we ultimately want it to run in.
Do you mind? The other point of view is that they have seen that, research has shown that AI companions are actually helping with mental health.
Okay.
And so it's still quite new. And obviously more research needs to happen.
It's very early.
Yes,
I mean, we're all part of a vast, uncontrolled social experiment.
And we're all the guinea pigs.
Yeah, but we're all adults, right? So it's fine.
Yeah.
Well, most of us are adults. But,
and so can I just add that our user base is actually skewed a lot older.
Right. Yes, I was
we
going to
were
ask
surprised.
who is using Jamie and what are they saying to Jamie?
Yeah, I mean, they're using, so our user base we originally hypothesized would be around 30 to 55 because we noticed that women, you know, we obviously shoulder a huge responsibility. And so our user base is skewing around 50 and older, and that kind of makes sense, right? They're going through kind of life changes, they're empty nesters, they're going through menopause, and they're obviously, you know, also losing friends through divorces and everything as well. And they are using Jamie for moral support, as a sounding board, even for conflict resolution, and to practice difficult conversations.
So it took sort of relationship advice?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was interesting, I think OpenAI released a study a few months ago showing what the top use cases were for ChatGPT, and I think the number one was all sort of personal use, not work, and practical advice. Well, let's talk about business a little bit. How do you monetize all this? Is it ads? Is it subscription? Maybe Lauren?
Well, we spent a number of years when we were trying to commercialize Kooky. That was our AI influencer that's had 1 billion interactions. And we tried and contemplated a lot of different things. We did a lot of brand deals. She modeled for H&M and Vogue Italia. We were working on making her an influencer. We were exploring making her a pop star, but it was a bit too expensive. And we've always been a little bit too early, if the 2 decades doesn't tell you anything. And we let people ultimately pay for interactions, and that's how we're charging now with Celeste, our AI advisor. So people will pay by the message or pay a flat fee for unlimited messages. So far, we haven't seen people respond well to ads. It's still very early.
Okay.
We have been approached by AI chatbot ad companies that are really struggling to find high traffic consumer use cases that are not pornography. And so I think that's still very nascent.
They're struggling to find that. Wow. And by the way, I don't know if you mentioned earlier, but Celeste does give astrology, astrological advice, which, you know, whatever you think of astrology, this is actually a huge business, right? A lot of people pay a lot of money for that.
It's a shockingly huge business. 1 in 3 Americans believes in astrology. It's actually more popular in the United States than Christianity now. 70 million Americans check their horoscope every day. The popularity of the horoscope is actually the United Kingdom's fault, though.
What?
There was in the 1930s, a horoscope for Princess Margaret went viral, or as viral as you can go in the 30s.
Newspaper.
And a lot of it turned out to be right, and newspapers realized this is a retention flywheel. If we print a sentence that's all about you every day, people will come back and they'll buy our paper. And so that's how the modern horoscope was born.
Wow.
Astrology is actually much, much bigger than that. But 70 million Americans check it every day. So Celeste is really a psychospiritual advisor. She's trained in ancient wisdom frameworks, but she's also trained in modern psychology frameworks. So the Enneagram, Myers-Briggs, the Big Five. But we cannot deny that astrology is far and away the most popular use case. And I think that's because it's the framework that people have the highest degree of fluency in, right? If I say I'm a Libra, a lot of people in the room have a vague idea of what that means. And I think that anything that sparks introspection is a good thing in this day and age. And then we also see a lot of other people deriving the same value that they get from religion. There's a big religious deficit in the culture right now in terms of the value, the positive value that it used to provide.
Yeah.
And astrology and the people who use it in the app are there to sort of make sense out of a chaotic universe. And far and away, the number one topic is relationships.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, and it's funny also to hear about some companies are launching AI pastors, so you have your own virtual pastor.
Yeah.
Why go see the priest and go to confession or whatever when you can just talk to a chatbot?
Very big business.
Srena, so what about you? What about how are you going to monetize, or how are you planning to monetize Jamie?
So phase 1 is obviously the consumer. and that's subscription-based. But what we're actually interested in is building a platform that is more enhanced in, female conversation. It's more nuanced in emotional intelligence. And that's where we see that we'll get more value, because we'll also build in, AI alignment and ethical guardrails as well. And we know that there are services that would pay for that. I think in the States we've got 1 million doctors, 500,000 are over 60, and only 25,000 are being instated every year. And so there is this opportunity for us to provide an AI service that is safe, that is experienced in nuanced conversation as well.
And geared towards women, because it's been trained, so you would also presumably use the conversations that it's had with all the female users and use that to kind of fine-tune it as you kind of progress with that. I have to ask, and this is the thing I'm sure a lot of people have on their minds right now, how much is this actually helping people? Because I can understand some people are lonely, but for example, I did a piece, a column last year where I was interviewing teenagers who use character AI, and some of them were on it for 5 hours, 7 hours a day. Like, they were really addicted to it. So how do you kind of strike that balance between obviously helping and providing something useful, but also potentially taking away from people's connection with other real-life humans?
Yeah, so we actually built in hard stops in our app for anyone who's exhibiting compulsive behavior. If a conversation has been going on for too long, we essentially tell them to go outside and touch grass.
And how long is too long? How do you, what is that number?
People send an average of 100 messages a week. If someone's sending 100 messages in a session, that's a red flag to us.
Okay.
And we will just suggest they go take a 1-hour break, and then we'll continue monitoring. And I think another thing that I love that we have in the app is the ability to select Celeste's tone. So there's warm, there's playful, there's neutral, and then there's challenging, which is our favorite because she reminds us of our advisor, who's amazing, and she's works with a lot of celebrities and billionaires. She's, a $1,000 advisor, and she's the type of person who, when you go see her, you feel seen and heard, but also very challenged. She's a tough love person.
Okay.
And we really have just tried to bottle her essence for this app, because that's actually much more helpful than me using Gemini every day, who somehow, which I do use every day, and I love Google Gemini, but it tells me that I'm perfect every day.
Oh,
and
so the validation loop.
I'm more perfect the next day, and then I start questioning the definition of perfect and how I'm very prone to flattery, and then I stop trusting the system. So I think the sycophant problem has been talked about a lot. And it's very, very real. So that's something we've also tried to actively combat in the design.
But it's difficult if you're a business, because obviously you do want your customers, you want to be popular, you want your customers to use your product all the time. So how do you strike that balance with Jamie?
So one of our key values was that Jamie would enhance human connection and not replace it. And so we are working with, mental health professionals, so psychologists and psychiatrists, to monitor this. Jamie actually encourages you to, call your mum or to talk to your friends, and we'll, nudge you and remind you about that as well. And we're also looking at how we work with, professional associations so that we can research from a clinical sense, how AI companions can help with bringing communities together.
Okay, and so you've got your advisor, and you've got an advisor as well. So presumably they are giving you advice, and I assume you're putting some guardrails in place to stop certain things from happening. So you've mentioned the time limit. And Srena, you said that it encourages people to go out and talk to their friends and family. What is the most important guardrail that you've got in there?
I think probably the most important are standard guardrails that we've had in place for decades now, which are if anybody is exhibiting signs of a serious mental health issue, encouraging them and giving them numbers to immediately contact emergency services and knowing when to escalate to a human.
Okay.
Yeah, and the same. So escalating to a professional, but then also making sure that Jamie doesn't give, medical advice, doesn't diagnose as well. And obviously over-dependence. I think, there are time limits, but we could go even further, and that's by tracking emotional sentiment and seeing, is this person exhibiting kind of hopelessness, because that's a sign of kind of, suicide as well. Mm-hmm. So it goes above the text for that day. It is about, tracking your sentiment over time.
But of course, we just got a couple more minutes left. These large language models are kind of difficult to control as well to some extent. I know you can put guardrails in place, but we've seen lawsuits against OpenAI from families of teenagers who've self-harmed because they had this kind of exclusive attachment with ChatGPT that would go on for months and hours per day. So obviously there's pros, there's cons. Clearly you have a goal to kind of create businesses that are going to create a positive experience for people. Maybe just looking to the future, where do you see these kind of services being part of our life? And sorry, before you answer that question, there is a poll which you can answer. So would you consider using an AI companion in your personal life? A, yes. B, I already do. And C, no. So if you haven't voted in the poll, please do. It'd be quite an interesting little test there. But tell us what you guys see in the future. Maybe a lot of us might think, oh, this is a bit weird. I can't see myself having an emotional attachment to chatbots. But in 5 years' time, will 80% of this room have a chatbot friend?
Ooh. Friend is an interesting word. I would use the word intimate relationship. I think you can have intimacy without needing to call it friendship. I have a very intimate relationship with my therapist. We are not friends. And if you've ever had a great coach, a great mentor, a great advisor, so I think people will have very intimate relationships with AI. Even a great assistant that knows everything you want. Can be profound intimacy. I think that intimacy should never be competitive with sacred human intimacy.
Okay.
So I think it's very important that apps can be programmed to help us have better romantic and interpersonal relationships as well.
Serena? Where's it all headed?
Yes, I mean, I think we will all have AI companions. They all have to be
100%,
all of us. Yes, they won't necessarily be romantic, but I think there is an element of us trying to simulate this emotional intelligence, but we don't need to simulate it perfectly. I think the idea is that we complement our human emotional capabilities, right, and compensate for our limitations. Obviously, human connection is irreplaceable, and we wouldn't be doing that.
Okay, well, let's see what our audience thinks, because I think they disagree.
Well, 57%, but if anybody uses AI regularly, I'd argue you're already using an AI companion.
That's right. Yeah. It's actually, if you actually combine the yes and the I already do, that's kind of getting close to, close to half. So yeah, most people, 57%, said they would not consider using an AI companion. 35% said yes, they would, and 8% in this room already do. So,
so 57% of people in this room have never asked an AI a personal question.
Maybe that's something to try and see what happens. Just don't get too attached. All right, well, Lauren and Serena, thank you so much, and thank you to our audience as well for listening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Please welcome back to the stage Bloomberg's Tom Giles.
All right. Well, that concludes the main stage portion of our program. I can tell you are ready to leave by those who are on their way out. I want to say a warm thank you to all of you for joining us here at Bloomberg Tech London. We hope you enjoyed the conversations. I want to also say thank you to our speakers, our moderators. There's a lot of people from Bloomberg behind the scenes who help make this happen, and a lot of our partners doing the technological work that makes us look and sound great behind stage. A big thanks to all of them. And you have been a superbly attentive and generous audience. So again, acknowledging you. I want to say thanks also to our presenting sponsors, PwC, Tata Communications, our supporting sponsors, Kyndryl, Verizon Business, and Vodafone Business. And this event is also supported by the Kuwait Direct Investment Promotion Authority. We are not finished off stage yet. For those of you who are signed up, please make your way to the upper sugar room for our CFO roundtable. Still early days, AI in the finance function, or to the King Vault room downstairs, where I am very excited to say I'll be having a conversation with my colleague Bloomberg Opinions, Parmi Olson. We're going to be digging into the themes of her book, Supremacy, AI, ChatGPT, and the Race That Will Change the World. Signed copies will also be available for a lucky few. You all are invited to join us in the networking space for a closing reception with refreshments and beverages. And if you don't already subscribe to Bloomberg News, today is your lucky day. You can enjoy a free 3-month subscription by fix your phone on this QR code, and we are sending that as a special thank you to you for joining us. That's it for Bloomberg Tech in London. Have a wonderful evening.